Imagine, if you will, a place, a space, where time moves slower, where shadows form the walls of your existence, a place where the eyes of those who are bound cannot see, and the world is but a mere echo of something far greater. This is the allegory of the cave. In the dim light of an ancient cavern, you find yourself among prisoners. Their limbs, shackled, lie motionless. The only thing they can see are the shadows, dancing on the stone wall ahead of them. These shadows are their world, their reality, their truth. What is it like to live in a world of shadows? To feel bound by what you see, yet never question what lies beyond. You, too, are one of them. You are among the prisoners, your eyes only able to comprehend the shifting figures, the fleeting images that flicker and sway. But you are unaware that beyond this world of darkened shapes, there is a world of light. There are others in the cave too, the ones who hold the power. They stand behind you, casting their own shadows. Behind a wall, they move puppets, and their hands create the movements that form the images on the wall. To you, these shadows are all that is real. You have never known anything else. You do not know that outside the cave, the sun shines and the trees sway gently in the breeze. You do not know that beyond the stone, the world sings in ways you can't even imagine. And yet, if one of these prisoners were to break free, if they were to slip from their chains, feel the rough stones beneath their feet, and stumble into the open air, would they even be able to bear the light? What would it feel like to leave behind the comfort of the shadows, to face the blinding truth that exists outside of this false reality? This, dear listener, is the question that Plato asks us. Are we not like the prisoners of the cave, bound by our own perceptions, held captive by the familiar? How often do we accept the world as we see it, never daring to question what lies beyond the veil of what we know? In a world of uncertainty and ambiguity, how often do we cling to the shadows, thinking they are the whole of existence? But imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to leave the cave, to step outside into the light of truth, to gaze upon the world in its full brilliance. The sun warm upon your skin, the sky vast and endless, the ground solid beneath your feet. The world would be a wonder, an awe-inspiring revelation, 1,000 times more beautiful than the fleeting images that once bound you. Yet, in the very same breath, there is a danger in this newfound knowledge. For as the freed prisoner gazes upon the world, they will surely be blinded by the intensity of the light. The truth, so vast and so infinite, will overwhelm their senses. It is as though the mind cannot comprehend such purity. It is as though we, as humans, were not made to see so clearly. And so, the freed prisoner might retreat, feeling the weight of their discovery too much to bear. You, dear listener, might ask yourself, where in your life are you living in the shadows? What truths lie just beyond your perception, waiting to be discovered? The cave is not a place confined to ancient philosophy. It is a space we all inhabit at times in our own lives. It is the place where our fears, our doubts, and our prejudices keep us bound. But to break free, to step into the light, is to embrace the unknown. Perhaps, like the freed prisoner, you will struggle to understand the world beyond the cave at first. Perhaps the truth will seem too overwhelming, too distant from the world you knew. But in time, the light will become familiar. It will shape you. It will become a part of your very being. In the quiet moments, as you lay here, drifting into sleep, think about the shadows that surround you. What are they hiding? What might you see if you chose to look beyond them? The cave is waiting to be left behind. The light is waiting for you to find it. But for now, Let the shadows wrap you in a soft embrace, knowing that one day you will walk in the light. In the stillness of the night, as you begin to drift deeper into the quiet folds of sleep, there lies a question that floats in the air, as ancient and as modern as the stars themselves. Who are you? It is a question so profound, it echoes through time. Who are you? Not just the name you were given, not the body you inhabit, but the essence of your being, the core of your existence. What is the true nature of the self? Descartes, the great philosopher of the 17th century, grappled with this question. And in his meditation, he found an answer that would send ripples through the waters of thought for centuries to come. He began with doubt, the most radical of all starting points. He doubted everything, the chair beneath him, the world around him, the very existence of his own body. How could he be sure of anything at all? In the silence of that doubt, he found one undeniable truth. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. The very act of doubting, of thinking, was proof enough that he existed. For if he could question, if he could doubt, then surely he must be real, if only in the act of thought itself. The self, Descartes realized, was not defined by the physical body, nor by the sensory world, but by the very act of consciousness, of awareness. The mind, this thinking, doubting, questioning part of us, was the core of the self. And here, in the quiet of your own mind, you too can reflect on this simple yet profound truth. The very act of thinking, of being aware of your own thoughts, is the proof that you are. You are not just a body. You are not just the sum of your experiences. You are the consciousness that observes them, the awareness that notices them. The self, then, is not a fixed thing, a singular entity. It is a process, a continuous unfolding of thought, reflection, and awareness. But if the self is defined by thought, then what of the body? What of the sensations that arise from touch, sight, sound? Can the self exist without the body, without the senses? Descartes' answer was clear. The mind is distinct from the body. The mind is a thinking substance, while the body is merely an extension, a physical object that can be doubted, broken, or lost. The body, then, does not define the self. The mind does. As you lay here, your body resting and your mind beginning to relax, consider for a moment the nature of your own thoughts. What are they? Fleeting images, memories, sensations? Or do they come from a deeper place? A wellspring of awareness that has always been with you, waiting to be recognized? But what if there is no I at all? What if the self is just an illusion, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the chaos around us? Some have wondered if the self is but a fleeting construct, a temporary manifestation of thoughts and sensations that arise and disappear. If this is true, then who are you really? Are you nothing more than a collection of fleeting experiences, a shifting pattern of awareness with no true, lasting core? As you lie here, drifting further into rest, think about this for a moment. The self is not something you can touch or hold. It is not something you can grasp, for it is not a thing. It is the awareness, the presence that fills the space between your thoughts, the stillness that underlies the noise. And in that stillness, you come to understand that the self is not bound by time, by place, or by the body. It is infinite in its essence, ever-changing yet ever-present, a constant thread in the fabric of your being. So, as you slip further into the quiet of sleep, let this thought linger with you. You are not your body. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that perceives them both. You are the stillness behind the movement, the calm that watches the storm. In the deepest parts of your being, you are already free. And in that freedom, you find peace. In the quiet depths of your mind, there is a question that lingers. Perhaps it is one you have never asked aloud. What does it mean to be? To be, not simply to exist, but to be, with all the mystery and wonder that this word evokes. The philosopher Martin Heidegger, in the early 20th century, ventured into this very question, peeling back the layers of existence to uncover the nature of being itself. For Heidegger, the question of being was not an abstract concept. It was the very essence of what it means to live. It is the fundamental question that underlies all other questions, the root from which all other inquiries grow. Heidegger's philosophy begins in a place of mystery. To be is not something we can easily define, because we are so often caught up in the everyday world, distracted by our tasks, our thoughts, our concerns. We move through life as though the question of existence is a matter of course. But Heidegger wanted us to pause. He wanted us to think deeply about what it means to be and how often we forget to ask. He spoke of the term being in the world, a concept that suggests that to be is not simply to exist in isolation, but to exist within the world, alongside others, in the midst of time. You, dear listener, are not merely a passive observer of existence, but an active participant in it. You are woven into the very fabric of life, connected to everything around you. Your being is not separate from the world, it is part of it. The air you breathe, the ground beneath your feet, the sky above, all are interwoven with your existence, and through them, you come to understand who you are. This idea of being is not static. It is dynamic, ever-changing, unfolding in every moment. To be, in Heidegger's view, is not simply to have existence, but to become, a continuous unfolding, an ongoing process. It is in the small, fleeting moments of everyday life that we come to understand the depth of our being. Every step you take, every breath you draw, is a testament to the living, breathing nature of your existence. But Heidegger also pointed out something important, the fact that we often forget this depth of being. We live in a world that demands so much of us. Tasks, responsibilities, the constant pull of time. We become absorbed in the hustle, the doings of life, and in this absorption, we lose sight of the question of being. We forget to ask ourselves what it truly means to exist. We become detached, disconnected from our own being, from the world around us. But here, in this moment, as you lie down to sleep, you have the chance to reconnect with that deep, existential awareness. You are here. You are part of the world, and the world is part of you. The soft rhythm of your breath, the gentle rise and fall of your chest, is a reminder that you are alive. In these quiet moments, when the noise of the world fades away, you can sense the pulse of your existence. It is here, in the stillness, that you truly become. Heidegger also brought attention to the concept of being toward death, the realization that our time in this world is limited, that our being is finite. This truth, though it may seem heavy, is not something to fear. Rather, it is something to embrace. As you lie here, drifting toward sleep, consider this. Your being is not an endless cycle of tasks and worries. It is not a series of moments to be filled with distractions. Your existence, in its truest form, is a gift. It is a fleeting, beautiful experience that is unfolding in this very moment. And though it may seem small, it is profound. In this quiet space, as you listen to the soft whispers of your thoughts, remember, you are not simply existing, you are becoming. So, let go of the weight of the world for now. Let the concerns of the day fade into the background. In this stillness, simply be. Simply exist. Feel the world around you as you drift deeper into rest, knowing that your being is as vast and profound as the stars in the sky. You are part of it all, and in this moment, that is enough. As you settle deeper into the quiet embrace of sleep, let your mind drift toward the vast expanse of reality. What is real, truly? Is the world around you the way it seems? Or is there something more to it, something beneath the surface? In the 18th century, the philosopher George Berkeley presented an idea that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the world. His philosophy, known as idealism, suggests that the nature of reality is not as concrete as we might believe. For Berkeley, the physical world does not exist independently of our perception of it. He famously declared, "Esse est percipi." To be is to be perceived. What does this mean? It means that the world, as we experience it, is not something that exists outside of us, in isolation. Rather, it is something that exists in our minds, because we perceive it. Objects, trees, mountains, and even the very fabric of the universe are, in a sense, dependent on our ability to perceive them. Without a mind to observe them, they would not exist in the way we understand them. The act of perception itself brings the world into being. Take a moment now, as you lie in the stillness, to think about this. The chair you sit on, the bed you rest in, the air you breathe, they are all, in a very real way, constructs of your own mind. The colors you see, the sounds you hear, the textures you feel, these are all experienced through the lens of your consciousness. What you perceive is the world as it appears to you. But how do you know if that is the world as it truly is? How can we trust our senses when they are so easily deceived? Berkeley's idealism invites us to consider the possibility that reality, as we know it, is not a fixed, independent thing. It is fluid, shaped by the very act of our perception. The world does not exist outside of us in the way we might think it does. Rather, it exists as long as there is someone or something to perceive it. As you slip into a deeper state of relaxation, let yourself ponder. What if the world is not what we have always assumed? What if the trees and the rivers, the stars above and the earth below, are all reflections in the mirror of your mind, waiting to be experienced, waiting to be seen? But Berkeley's view does not deny the existence of the world entirely. Rather, it suggests that the world exists in a different way than we usually think. According to Berkeley, the world exists in the mind of God. In a sense, it is God who perceives everything, and through God's perception, the world exists as we know it. Our own perception, then, is a reflection of the divine consciousness that shapes the reality we experience. Imagine, for a moment, that the world you inhabit is not a world created by mere chance or by physical processes, but one that exists within a vast cosmic mind. Each moment, each experience, is a part of the unfolding of something much greater than yourself. And in this way, every experience, every perception is sacred. Every sensation, every thought is part of the divine tapestry of existence. As you rest here, nestled in the quiet of the night, think about this. What would it mean if your experience of the world were not isolated from the mind of God, but connected to it? How might that change the way you see the trees, the sky, the faces of the people around you? How might it change the way you perceive yourself? If the world exists because it is perceived, then you are a part of that perception. You are, in a sense, the eyes through which the universe looks upon itself. As you drift deeper into sleep, let go of the need to understand fully. Just allow yourself to rest in the mystery of being, knowing that the world you experience, the world you are part of, is something both ordinary and extraordinary, both real and imagined. It exists because you perceive it, because you are here to witness it. And in that quiet witness, you are a part of the great divine mind that shapes the world. As you begin to sink deeper into the embrace of sleep, let your thoughts float toward a question that, for centuries, has lingered in the minds of those who seek meaning. What does it truly mean to live a good life? The pursuit of goodness, virtue, and happiness is a theme that echoes through the chambers of philosophy. And one of the most influential voices in this quest was the philosopher Aristotle. In his work on ethics, Aristotle proposed a simple yet profound idea: that the good life is the life of virtue, lived in harmony with one's true nature. For Aristotle, virtue is not an abstract concept. It is a way of being, a way of living, that is rooted in the very essence of who you are. He believed that to live virtuously is to align yourself with your true potential, to strive toward the highest expression of your humanity. Virtue, for Aristotle, was not merely a set of rules to follow, but an ongoing process of becoming the best version of yourself, the most fully realized human being. At the heart of Aristotle's philosophy is the idea of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or happiness. But this is not the kind of fleeting happiness we often seek, the pleasure of a moment, the gratification of desires. No. Aristotle's happiness is something deeper, more lasting. It is the fulfillment of your potential, the living of a life that is in accordance with your true nature, a life that is balanced and whole. It is the kind of happiness that comes from living a life of purpose and meaning. Aristotle believed that virtue lies in finding the balance between extremes. Each virtue, he said, is the mean between two vices, one of excess and one of deficiency. Courage, for example, is the balance between recklessness and cowardice. Generosity is the mean between prodigality and stinginess. Justice, wisdom, temperance. Each virtue is found in the middle, where balance and harmony exist. As you rest here, think about this. How often do you strive for balance in your own life? How often do you find yourself pulled toward excess or pulled too far in the other direction, toward scarcity or fear? In the stillness of the night, consider what virtues you may wish to cultivate. What is the balance that you seek? What is the highest expression of your own potential? Aristotle also believed that virtues are not innate. They must be cultivated through practice. You do not become virtuous by simply wishing it. Virtue, like any skill, is developed over time through habit and effort. Just as a musician becomes skilled by playing their instrument every day, so too do we cultivate virtues by practicing them, by choosing again and again to act with courage, with kindness, with wisdom. This is the beauty of Aristotle's philosophy. It is not a matter of simply understanding what is good, but of becoming good through our actions. The good life is one that is lived with intention, with mindfulness, with a commitment to our own personal growth and development. But what does it mean, then, to live a virtuous life in a world that often seems out of balance? In a world filled with distractions, with pressures, with expectations from others. As you drift further into sleep, think about the virtues you might wish to cultivate in your own life. Perhaps it is patience in the face of frustration. Perhaps it is generosity toward others, even when it is difficult. In these quiet moments, allow yourself to feel a sense of peace in knowing that virtue is not something distant or unattainable. It is something that lives within you, waiting to be awakened through your choices, your actions, and your intentions. You are capable of great things, and the good life is within your reach every day. So, as you relax into the deep embrace of sleep, know that tomorrow is another day to practice the virtues that will shape your life. Every small decision you make, every act of kindness or courage, is a step toward a life well lived, a life of virtue, a life of meaning, a life of flourishing. As you begin to drift further into the quiet, let your mind wander to a question that haunts both the awake and the asleep. Are we truly free? Or are we merely following a path set for us long ago? The question of free will has lingered for centuries, like a delicate thread woven through the fabric of philosophy. Do we have control over our actions? Or are we simply the product of forces beyond our control? Can we truly choose? Or is the very idea of choice an illusion? On one side of this debate lies determinism, the belief that everything in the universe, including our actions, is determined by prior causes. The world is a vast, interconnected web, and every event, every thought, every action is the result of an unbroken chain of cause and effect. The moment you were born, the universe began to move in ways that would lead you to this very moment. From the stars above to the genes in your body, everything is determined. In this view, the concept of free will is an illusion. Your choices are not truly yours. They are the result of a long line of causes, stretching back through time. Your thoughts, your desires, your actions, are they really your own? Or are they merely the echo of forces far beyond your conscious control? Yet, even as you consider this, there is another voice, one that calls out from the depths of existentialism. The existentialists, like Sartre, rejected the notion that we are bound by the chain of causes. For them, human beings are radically free, even in a world that often seems devoid of meaning. They argued that we are not simply the product of biology or circumstance. We are the architects of our own existence. In this view, freedom is not just a theoretical concept, it is an inescapable truth of the human experience. We are condemned to be free. This freedom, however, is not the freedom of a carefree, light existence. It is a burden. For in acknowledging that we are free, we must also acknowledge the weight of our choices. Every action, every decision, comes with responsibility. The freedom to choose means that we are accountable for the consequences of our choices, and that can be a heavy burden to bear. As you lie here, sinking deeper into sleep, you might ask yourself, what is the nature of your own freedom? Are you truly free to make your own choices? Or are your actions the result of unseen forces? Perhaps you can think of moments in your life when you felt the weight of a decision, a moment when you felt as if you were standing on the edge of possibility, about to step into an unknown future. In that moment, did you feel the full expanse of your freedom? Or did you feel the pull of fate, of forces beyond your control, guiding you along a path you had little say in? In the stillness of the night, think about the moments in your life where you made a choice. Were those moments born of pure freedom? Or were they the culmination of everything that came before them? The circumstances of your birth, the people you were born to, the experiences that shaped you. And yet, even as you contemplate this, you might feel something deep within you, the recognition that, in some sense, you are still free. You still make choices, even if they are influenced by countless factors. The existentialists, too, understood this tension. While we may be shaped by our past, by our biology, by the world around us, They believed that we are never entirely bound by these forces. We always have the freedom to choose, to redefine who we are, to shape our existence anew. In every moment, no matter how small, we are free to choose how we respond, how we move forward. In the face of a world that often seems deterministic, the existentialists taught us that our freedom is both our greatest gift and our greatest responsibility. In the quiet moments, let yourself feel the beauty of this freedom. It is not a freedom without consequence, but it is a freedom nonetheless. And in that freedom, you are alive. As you slip deeper into the tranquility of the night, your mind begins to wander. What is it that allows you to be aware of this moment, of yourself, of the world around you? What is consciousness? Consciousness is perhaps the most elusive, the most profound mystery of all. It is the quiet observer, the constant thread that ties together our experiences, our thoughts, and our sense of self. And yet, despite its intimate presence in our lives, it remains one of the most enigmatic aspects of our existence. Throughout the history of philosophy, the nature of consciousness has been a subject of much debate. Some thinkers have posited that consciousness and the physical world are separate, distinct entities, a view known as dualism. Others have argued that consciousness is not separate from the physical world, but rather is an integral part of it. This is the position known as monism. Dualism, famously championed by René Descartes, suggests that the mind and body are two distinct substances. The body, according to dualism, is made up of matter and follows the laws of physics. The mind, or consciousness, is something entirely different. It is immaterial, non-physical, and operates outside of the realm of the body's physical processes. For Descartes, the mind is the source of thought, reason, and awareness, and it exists independently of the body. The mind interacts with the body through the pineal gland, but the two are fundamentally different in nature. This view presents a striking picture of human existence. We are, in essence, two separate entities: our body, which operates in the material world, and our mind, which exists in a realm beyond the physical. The mind, then, is not bound by the limitations of the body. It is free, eternal, and capable of perceiving and understanding the world in a way that the body cannot. Yet, as you rest here in the stillness of sleep, consider this. How could an immaterial mind influence a physical body? How could something that is not made of matter interact with something that is? The problem of dualism lies in this very question. The challenge of explaining how two such different substances could communicate, influence, and depend on each other. Monism, on the other hand, offers a simpler solution. According to monistic views, consciousness and the body are not separate entities, but two aspects of the same thing. There is no dividing line between the mind and the body. Instead, they are intimately connected, with consciousness arising from the physical processes of the brain and the body. Monism suggests that everything, mind, body, and world, is made of the same substance, and that consciousness is simply the result of complex interactions within the brain. This view offers a more seamless picture of reality. The mind is not something separate from the body, but something that emerges from it. Consciousness is not an immaterial substance, but a function of the material world, shaped by the brain, the senses, and the experiences we have. In this view, there is no need to explain how the mind and body interact, because they are not separate at all. They are two sides of the same coin. As you sink deeper into the calm of sleep, consider this. What is consciousness, really? Is it something separate, Something that transcends the physical world, as dualism suggests? Or is it something that emerges from the complex interactions of the body, the brain, and the world around you, as monism suggests? Perhaps the true nature of consciousness is not something we can fully grasp, not something that can be neatly explained or categorized. Perhaps, like the sleep you are entering now, consciousness is something that must simply be experienced. It is the quiet observer that resides within you, the gentle knowing that you exist, that you are here, that you are awake to the world. It is the stillness beneath the noise, the awareness beneath the thoughts, the light in the dark. And as you drift deeper into sleep, let this thought carry you. Consciousness, in all its mystery and wonder, is not something to be solved. It is something to be lived, to be felt, to be experienced. Whether it is a separate substance or a product of the body, it is the very essence of what it means to be aware, to exist, to be. As the world quiets around you, and your mind begins to settle into the tranquil space between wakefulness and sleep, there comes a question that has whispered through the ages. What is the meaning of life? It is a question that many have pondered. From the great thinkers of the past to the quiet moments in our own hearts. What is the purpose of this journey we are on? Why do we exist at all? And what is the true meaning of it all? Existentialism, a philosophical movement that arose in the 19th and 20th centuries, approaches this question with a certain rawness, a deep awareness of life's fragility and uncertainty. For existentialists, life does not come with a built-in meaning. There is no grand, cosmic purpose waiting to be discovered. There are no preordained answers, no ready-made explanations that will give our lives meaning. Instead, meaning is something that each of us must create for ourselves, through our choices, our actions, and our reflections. Existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus spoke of the absurdity of life, the realization that the universe is vast, indifferent, and without inherent purpose. We find ourselves in a world that often seems devoid of meaning, where suffering, uncertainty, and chaos are as much a part of existence as joy and love. And yet, it is in the face of this absurdity that we are called to find our own meaning. Sartre famously said, "Existence precedes essence." This means that we are not born with a purpose, a meaning, or a predefined nature. We come into the world as blank slates, and it is through our choices and actions that we give our lives shape. We are free to define ourselves, to create our own meaning, but this freedom comes with responsibility. The burden of meaning rests on our shoulders. As you lay here, letting the thoughts drift softly through your mind, consider this. How often do you seek meaning in external things? Money, success, relationships. How often do you look outside of yourself, hoping for some sign, some answer, to show you the way? Existentialism asks us to look within. It asks us to create our own meaning, to find purpose not in the things we acquire or the roles we play, but in the way we choose to live our lives. In this quiet moment, think about what meaning you have found in your own life. Perhaps it is in the love you give, the moments of beauty you experience, the connections you form with others. Perhaps it is in the simple, everyday acts of kindness, of honesty, of living authentically. Meaning, the existentialists suggest, is not something that is given to us. It is something that we create in every moment, in every choice, in every step we take. But there is another facet to the existentialist view of life's meaning, the recognition that life is finite. Our time in this world is limited, and the awareness of our mortality gives a certain urgency to our search for meaning. In the face of death, how will we live? What will we do with the time we have? The existentialists believe that it is precisely this awareness of death that gives our lives meaning. In knowing that our time is limited, we are called to live more fully, to embrace the freedom we have, and to create meaning in the time we have left. And as you lie here on the edge of sleep, think about your own life. What meaning have you found? And what meaning do you still seek? Are there dreams yet to be realized, paths yet to be walked? Existentialism teaches us that meaning is not a destination, but a journey. It is the act of living itself, the choices we make, the lives we touch, the moments we seize, that gives life its richness. So as you surrender to the soft embrace of sleep, let this thought linger. The meaning of life is yours to create. It is not something handed to you, nor something you must search for in distant places. It is found in the small, quiet moments, in the choices you make, and in the way you live each day. You have the freedom to define your life, to give it purpose, to make it your own. And when you awaken, carry that sense of freedom with you. Life may not always offer clear answers, but it always offers the opportunity to create meaning. It is yours to shape. In the quiet folds of the night, as you drift deeper into sleep, imagine, if you will, a world without rules, without boundaries, just an expanse of freedom, of endless possibility. And yet, in that boundless freedom, there is a question that arises. What keeps us together? What is it that binds us in the fragile web of society? This question has intrigued thinkers for centuries, and one of the most influential answers came from the philosophy of the social contract. The social contract is the idea that individuals in society come together and form an agreement, consciously or unconsciously, to live under a common set of rules. But what are these rules, and why do we agree to follow them? The early modern philosophers Thomas Hobbes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and John Locke each gave a different answer to this question, framing the social contract in very different lights, yet all agreeing that human beings, by nature, are not solitary creatures. We live in society because it is the way we make sense of our existence, the way we navigate the chaos of life and form meaningful relationships with others. Hobbes, in his famous work Leviathan, painted a rather grim picture of the human condition. According to Hobbes, without a social contract, life in the state of nature would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. He believed that humans, left to their own devices, would be in a constant state of conflict, driven by their instincts and desires. In Hobbes's view, the social contract is necessary to avoid chaos. People, in their pursuit of self-interest, would agree to surrender certain freedoms in exchange for security. In return, they would submit to the authority of a sovereign power, an absolute ruler or government, that would keep order and protect them from the violence of the state of nature. As you lay here, resting in the quiet, imagine the world as Hobbes saw it. What would it be like if there were no laws, no protections, no common understanding of right and wrong? Would you feel safe? Would you feel secure in your choices? The social contract, according to Hobbes, is what makes society possible. It gives us the structure, the rules, and the authority we need to coexist without descending into violence. In contrast, Rousseau had a very different view. Rousseau, in his work The Social Contract, argued that society, as it existed in his time, was a source of inequality and corruption. He believed that in the state of nature, humans were free, peaceful, and equal, living simple, natural lives. But with the rise of civilization, Rousseau believed that people became enslaved to societal norms, private property, and oppressive institutions. The social contract for Rousseau was not about submitting to authority, but rather about creating a society based on collective freedom and equality. In Rousseau's ideal world, individuals would come together to form a general will, a shared sense of the common good in which personal desires would be aligned with the collective well-being of the community. Think for a moment, as you settle deeper into sleep, about Rousseau's vision. What would it mean for society to be built not on authority, but on the collective will of its members? In a world where individuals are not beholden to the whims of rulers or the structures of power, what would freedom look like? How would we define justice? For Rousseau, the social contract is a way to reclaim the inherent equality and freedom that we lost when we entered into the complexities of modern life. And then, there is Locke. Locke's view of the social contract was somewhere between Hobbes's and Rousseau's. In his work, Two Treatises of Government, Locke argued that in the state of nature, humans are generally good and capable of living together peacefully. However, the absence of a neutral authority to resolve disputes creates insecurity. Locke's social contract is one in which individuals consent to form a government. But this government must be limited and accountable to the people. Unlike Hobbes, Locke believed that the power of the government should be restricted by natural rights to life, liberty, and property. The role of government, in Locke's view, is to protect these rights, not to impose absolute control over the people. As you rest here, consider Locke's vision. What would it mean for society to be based on the protection of individual rights? A government that is not absolute, but one that exists to serve the people, to protect their freedoms and dignity. Locke's social contract emphasizes that the power of the government comes from the consent of the governed. It is not a power to dominate, but a power to protect and preserve the rights of individuals. But as you drift deeper into sleep, remember this. The social contract is not a set of rigid laws or rules. It is a living, breathing agreement that we, as individuals and as members of society, choose to uphold. It is a way to balance our individual freedoms with the needs of the collective. It is the agreement that keeps us connected to each other, to the world around us, and to the possibility of a more just and harmonious life. As you settle further into the peace of sleep, imagine just for a moment standing at a crossroads. Not in a physical sense, but in a place where moral choices hang in the balance. Here, you must make a decision that will weigh heavily on your conscience. A choice between lives, between consequences, between right and wrong. This is the essence of the famous thought experiment known as the trolley problem, an ethical dilemma that has captivated philosophers for decades. The problem is deceptively simple in its premise, yet it pulls you into the depths of moral reasoning, forcing you to confront the complexities of human choice and responsibility. Imagine, if you will, that you are standing by a set of train tracks. In the distance, a trolley is speeding toward 5 people who are tied to the tracks. There is no way to warn them. The trolley will hit them and they will die. But as you stand there, you see a lever nearby. If you pull it, the trolley will switch to another track, one where only one person is tied down. You now face a choice. Do you pull the lever, sacrificing 1 life to save 5? Or do you do nothing, allowing the trolley to follow its course and kill the 5 people, preserving the life of the one? The dilemma lies not in the facts of the situation, but in the ethics of the decision. What makes this choice so difficult is the tension between 2 opposing ethical frameworks, utilitarianism and deontology. Utilitarianism, a philosophy championed by thinkers like John Stuart Mill, suggests that the right action is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. From a utilitarian perspective, pulling the lever is the morally correct choice, as it minimizes harm and maximizes the well-being of the many. In this case, the one life lost is outweighed by the 5 lives saved. Yet, deontologists, philosophers like Immanuel Kant, argue that the morality of an action is determined by the action itself, not the consequences. In this view, pulling the lever is morally wrong because it involves an active decision to harm one person, even for the sake of saving others. According to deontology, you have a duty not to intentionally harm others, regardless of the outcome. As you lie here, relaxed and drifting, consider this. What would you do in this moment of moral crisis? Could you pull the lever, knowing you would be responsible for the death of an innocent person? Or would you let the trolley follow its path, accepting the consequences of inaction? The trolley problem doesn't just ask us to choose between 2 options. It asks us to reflect on the very nature of morality. What is the right thing to do? Is it the choice that causes the least harm, or the choice that upholds a moral duty? Are we responsible for the consequences of our actions? Or is it enough to simply follow a set of rules, regardless of the outcome? As you sink deeper into sleep, let the problem echo softly in your mind. Perhaps the true challenge of the trolley problem is not the decision itself, but the way it forces us to examine our beliefs about life, death, and morality. It reminds us that every choice we make carries weight, and that our decisions have consequences that ripple out in ways we may never fully understand. And yet, the trolley problem is not just an academic exercise. It is a metaphor for the moral choices we face in our own lives, every day. In each moment, we are confronted with decisions that require us to balance the needs of the many with the rights of the individual. So, as you rest here, drifting into the peaceful arms of sleep, think of the choices you face in your own life. How do you weigh the moral dilemmas that come your way? What principles guide your decisions? The trolley problem may be a simple thought experiment, but its lessons run deep. Every choice, no matter how small, is a step on the path of moral responsibility, and every decision reflects our understanding of what it means to be human. As the soft stillness of the night wraps around you, imagine, if you will, a ship, a grand ship, once new, now weathered by time. Its timbers are worn, its sails torn, but it carries on, through calm seas and turbulent storms alike. And yet, there is a question that stirs in the air. Is it still the same ship? This is the essence of the ship of Theseus paradox, a philosophical riddle that has challenged minds for centuries. It begins with a simple thought experiment. Suppose a ship, over time, undergoes a series of repairs. Every part of it, the wood of the hull, the sails, the rudder, is replaced until eventually, not a single part of the original ship remains. Is it still the ship of Theseus? If not, at what point did it stop being the same ship? Was it the moment the first plank was replaced? Or was it when the last piece of the original ship was gone? The paradox, while seemingly abstract, touches on deep questions about identity, continuity, and change. What makes something the same over time? Is it the material that constitutes it? Or is it the idea of it, the essence that we hold in our minds? If all the parts of a thing are replaced, is it still the same thing? Or has it become something new? As you lie here, resting in the quiet of the night, consider this. You, too, are constantly changing. Your body, your thoughts, your experiences. All of these shift over time. Cells regenerate, memories fade, and new experiences shape who you are. Are you the same person you were yesterday? 10 years ago? Or are you constantly becoming someone new? Similarly, we might find that our own identity is not merely the physical body we inhabit or the individual moments that make up our lives. Instead, it is the ongoing journey, the continuity of experience and growth that defines us. Even as we change, even as parts of us are replaced, whether by time, by circumstance, or by choice, we remain, in some way, the same. It is the continuity of being that gives us our sense of self. But there is another twist to the ship of Theseus paradox. Imagine that, rather than simply replacing the parts of the ship, someone gathers all of the original parts, the wood, the sails, the rudder, and uses them to rebuild the ship. Which ship is the real ship of Theseus? The one that has been continuously repaired, or the one that is made up of the original, unaltered parts? This brings us to a deeper question about identity. Is it the material composition of something that makes it what it is? Or is it the continuity of its existence, its essence, that defines it? The paradox suggests that the concept of identity is not as fixed as we often believe. Just as the ship, in one sense, is both the new ship and the old ship, so too are we constantly in flux, shaped by the passing of time and the changes in our physical and mental states. As you drift deeper into the tranquility of sleep, think of the many ways in which your own ship has changed. How many pieces of yourself have been replaced over the years? And yet, even as you change, are you still the same person? The ship of Theseus invites us to question what it means to remain the same, and whether true identity is found in the sum of our parts or in the continuity of our existence. In the end, the paradox may not offer a simple answer. It may not be about resolving the question of identity, but about understanding the fluidity of life, the way that we, like the ship, are constantly in motion, constantly evolving. We are not static beings, fixed in time. We are dynamic, ever-changing, and yet always ourselves. Just as the ship carries on its journey, so too do we. So, as you lie here, letting sleep carry you away, embrace the mystery of your own identity. Know that you are both the ship and the sea, constantly changing, yet always you. And in that paradox, there is beauty. There is peace. As you sink deeper into the stillness of sleep, consider a quiet question that drifts gently through the mind. How do we know what we know? How do we come to trust that the sun will rise tomorrow? That the world will continue to turn? That the past will hold true in the future? David Hume, one of the most influential philosophers of the Enlightenment, posed a deeply unsettling question about how we come to know things. In his problem of induction, Hume challenges the very foundation of human knowledge. He points out that our everyday understanding of the world is based on induction, the process of drawing conclusions from repeated experiences. We expect that because something has happened in the past, it will happen again in the future. The sun has risen every day of our lives. Therefore, we believe that it will rise again tomorrow. And yet, Hume argued, there is no logical reason to trust that the future will resemble the past. We cannot prove that the sun will rise tomorrow just because it has risen every day before. In fact, the assumption that the future will mirror the past is itself an act of faith. There is no necessary connection between past events and future events. They are not bound by any inherent rule of nature. And so, we are left with a paradox. How can we trust our knowledge of the world? when it is based on an assumption that cannot be proven. As you lie here, drifting toward sleep, think about the implications of Hume's problem. Every time you predict the outcome of an event, whether you believe the sun will rise or that your coffee will be hot in the morning, you are relying on an assumption. You are trusting in induction. Yet, Hume reminds us, this trust is not founded on reason. It is something we do out of habit, out of necessity, because we must rely on it to navigate the world. But what does this mean for our understanding of reality? If we cannot prove that the future will be like the past, then how can we know anything at all? This is the heart of Hume's problem, the uncertainty of knowledge. We live in a world where certainty is elusive, and every belief we hold, whether about the laws of nature, the behavior of objects, or the continuity of time, rests on the shaky foundation of past experiences. In truth, we have no guarantee that our future experiences will match those of the past. Hume's problem of induction doesn't just challenge our understanding of the world. It challenges the very way we think about knowledge. It forces us to confront the limits of reason and the role of habit and experience in shaping our beliefs. The world we perceive, in all its predictability, is built on the assumption that things will continue as they have always been. But, in the quiet recesses of thought, we realize that this assumption is not guaranteed. As you rest here, allow yourself to feel the weight of this uncertainty. In the stillness of the night, consider how much of your life is based on the assumption that the future will unfold as the past has. We trust in routines, in patterns, in habits. But what if these assumptions are ultimately unfounded? What if everything could change in an instant? And yet, Hume's challenge does not leave us powerless. While it may shake our confidence in the certainty of knowledge, it also opens the door to a deeper, more profound understanding of our place in the world. Perhaps the lesson of Hume's problem is not that we should abandon induction, but that we should approach our knowledge with humility. We must recognize that while we rely on past experience to navigate the future, we do so with an awareness of its limits. The world is not a predictable machine, bound by laws we can fully comprehend. It is a vast, unfolding mystery. In these quiet moments before sleep, let Hume's problem remind you of the fragility of knowledge. We are creatures of habit, but our habits are not infallible. We look to the past for answers, but those answers are never guaranteed. And yet, in that uncertainty, there is freedom. There is beauty. For the world is always a little more mysterious than we realize. And that mystery invites us to wonder, to seek, and to embrace the unknown. As the world quiets around you, and you begin to sink deeper into the peaceful embrace of sleep, let your mind gently wander toward a question that has troubled the deepest thinkers for millennia. What is the nature of God? For centuries, humans have sought to understand the divine, to grasp the nature of existence itself and the force that holds the universe in its delicate balance. One of the most profound arguments for the existence of God comes from Anselm of Canterbury, a philosopher and theologian who, in the 11th century, proposed an idea so abstract, so philosophical, that it would stir debate for generations to come. This is known as the ontological argument. Anselm's argument begins with a simple but powerful assertion: God is that than which nothing greater can be conceived. This means that God, by definition, is the greatest possible being, greater than anything we can imagine, greater than any object, person, or idea. But Anselm takes this a step further. He argues that if we can conceive of a being that is greater than anything else, then that being must also exist. For existence, Anselm claims, is a necessary attribute of greatness. If something exists only in the mind, but not in reality, then it could be surpassed by a being that exists both in the mind and in reality. In other words, if God is the greatest conceivable being, then God must exist in reality, because a being that exists only in thought would be lesser than one that exists both in thought and in reality. To imagine the greatest possible being, Anselm suggests, is to imagine a being that must exist, because existence is part of what makes something truly the greatest. As you rest here, drifting deeper into the quiet, think about this. Could existence itself be an essential quality of greatness? In our own lives, we often value the tangible, the real, the present. We appreciate things not only in their concept, but in their being. A great idea is made even greater when it is realized, when it is brought into the world. So too does Anselm suggest that God, being the greatest conceivable being, must not only be imagined, but must exist in reality. This argument, of course, is not without its critics. The philosopher Immanuel Kant, centuries after Anselm, would challenge the idea that existence could be considered a predicate, a quality or attribute that adds to the greatness of a thing. To Kant, existence is not something that can be added to an object in the way we might add other qualities like color or size. Existence, for Kant, is simply a necessary condition for anything to be part of our experience. It is not a defining feature of a thing's greatness. And yet, Anselm's ontological argument continues to fascinate, for it speaks to something deep within us, the desire to understand the ultimate nature of reality, the pull toward the divine. In our own lives, we often look for meaning, for truth, for something greater than ourselves. And in this search, we may find that the concept of God, like the concept of ultimate greatness, is an idea that holds within it the very notion of its own necessity. As you lay here, floating between wakefulness and sleep, consider the idea of a being so great, so perfect, that it must exist. How does this image sit with you? Is it comforting? Or is it unsettling to think that such a being might be both an idea and a reality? What does it mean to conceive of something that is beyond human comprehension, yet is necessary for the very fabric of existence? Perhaps, in the quiet of the night, we do not need to resolve the tension of the ontological argument. Perhaps it is not the conclusion that matters, but the journey of contemplation. For the question of God, of the ultimate being, is not a question with a single definitive answer. It is a question that invites us to look beyond the horizon of what we know and to consider the mysteries that lie just beyond our reach. And so, as you slip deeper into rest, let this question drift with you. What is God? And how might we, as finite beings, begin to understand the infinite? In the search for answers, we may find that the very act of contemplating the divine brings us closer to understanding our place in the cosmos, a place where we too are part of something greater than ourselves. As the gentle rhythm of your breath deepens, let your thoughts wander toward a question that touches the core of human morality. What is the right thing to do? In the quiet moments before sleep, we are often confronted with the weight of moral choices, the small decisions that shape our lives, and the larger ones that shape the course of history. The question of how we should act in the world is one that has preoccupied philosophers for centuries. But perhaps no answer is as universally influential as that of Immanuel Kant, whose moral philosophy continues to resonate today. Kant's ethical theory is built upon a single, profound idea: The categorical imperative. The categorical imperative is the principle that dictates how we ought to act, and it is guided by a simple yet powerful rule. Act only according to that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. In simpler terms, before you act, ask yourself, could I will that everyone act in this same way under similar circumstances? Could this action be made a universal law that applies to all? For Kant, morality is not about the consequences of our actions, nor is it based on what we desire or prefer. Instead, morality is about adhering to a rule that applies universally, one that respects the dignity and autonomy of every individual. The categorical imperative requires us to act in ways that could be universalized without contradiction. If you choose to lie, for example, you are acting in a way that, if universally applied, would undermine trust itself, making lying meaningless. Thus, you are required to tell the truth, regardless of the consequences, because the principle of honesty could be universalized without contradiction. As you rest here, with your mind gently unfolding into sleep, consider this. What would it mean to live by the categorical imperative in your own life? How often do we act out of self-interest or make choices based on the consequences we expect? Kant asks us to go beyond these considerations. He calls us to act out of respect for moral law itself, and not merely for what we might gain or avoid. The categorical imperative places a tremendous responsibility on each of us. It tells us that we are not free to act according to our whims, but that we are bound by duty. Duty to treat others with respect, duty to adhere to principles that can be universally applied. It asks us to see ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as members of a larger moral community where our actions affect everyone else. And yet, there is a profound beauty in Kant's vision. His moral philosophy invites us to see the world not through the lens of self-interest, but through the lens of shared humanity. Every time we choose to act according to moral principles, we affirm the inherent worth of every individual, and we contribute to the creation of a world where respect and dignity are universal. This is not a world governed by the consequences of our actions, but a world guided by duty, guided by the inherent value of moral law. In the quiet of the night, think of the moments in your life when you made choices based on more than just personal gain. Perhaps you acted out of compassion, out of a desire to do what is right, not because of what you would receive in return, but because it was the right thing to do. These moments, Kant would argue, are the moments when we align ourselves with the universal moral law. So, as you drift deeper into sleep, let the idea of the categorical imperative settle gently in your mind. Imagine a world where everyone acts according to the same moral principles, where each individual is treated with dignity, where honesty and respect are universal. This is the world that Kant envisioned. A world where morality is not just a personal choice, but a shared commitment to the common good. In this quiet space, let your thoughts be guided by the knowledge that every action you take matters, not just to you, but to the world around you. The categorical imperative calls you to live a life of integrity, to act in ways that could be universalized, and to respect the inherent value of every person. In that commitment, there is peace. There is purpose. As the night settles around you and the peaceful stillness of sleep begins to deepen, imagine a world where every event, every experience, every thought, and every sensation has a reason. Not just any reason, but a sufficient reason. A cause that explains why things are the way they are, and why they must be so. The principle of sufficient reason is a fundamental idea in the philosophy of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. a philosopher and mathematician who sought to uncover the underlying order of the universe. According to Leibniz, everything in existence must have a reason for being. There is no such thing as an event or phenomenon without an explanation. This principle suggests that for everything that happens, there must be a sufficient reason that accounts for it. An answer to the question, why is this the case, rather than some other way? In Leibniz's vision of the universe, every event, every state of affairs, is part of a grand, harmonious design. The world is not a chaotic, random collection of events, but a place where everything fits together with logical necessity. The principle of sufficient reason applies not just to the observable phenomena in the world, but to the very structure of reality itself. There is a reason why the world exists as it does, and not otherwise. From the smallest detail to the vastest cosmic order, everything is connected by reason, by a chain of causes and effects that stretch through time. As you rest here, quietly and peacefully, think for a moment about the world around you. Can you see the threads of reason connecting everything, even in the moments that seem random or chaotic? Why does the sun rise and set each day? Why do the seasons change? Why do we experience joy and sorrow? Leibniz suggests that there is no random happening. Each event, whether large or small, must have a sufficient reason behind it. And within that reason is an order, a purpose, a deeper logic that guides the unfolding of everything. For Leibniz, the world is the best possible world because it operates according to the principle of sufficient reason. There may be suffering, there may be hardship, but each event, he argues, serves a greater purpose in the grand design. The universe is perfectly arranged, even if we cannot always understand the reasons behind the events that unfold within it. As you allow your mind to soften into sleep, consider this. What if everything in your life, the things you enjoy, the challenges you face, the people you meet, has a reason, a purpose, a meaning that transcends your understanding? Leibniz's principle asks us to believe that, even in the moments of uncertainty, there is an underlying reason for everything. There is a pattern to the universe, even if it is beyond our grasp. But the principle of sufficient reason does not just apply to the external world. It also applies to the very thoughts you have, the choices you make, and the emotions you feel. Every thought and feeling has its origin, its reason. And yet, as you think about this, you may also realize that there is mystery in the idea of reason itself. What is the ultimate reason behind the reason for everything? What is the origin of all reasons? Leibniz's philosophy does not offer us all the answers. Instead, it invites us to search for the reasons that lie behind the world's mysteries, to wonder at the infinite chain of causes and effects that govern existence. As you drift deeper into sleep, let the thought of reason's vastness wash over you. Imagine a world where every leaf that falls, every wave that crashes, every thought that enters your mind has its reason, its explanation. This world, while perhaps beyond full comprehension, is one that operates according to an inherent harmony, an order that unites all things. And in this order, you are part of the grand design, connected to everything around you by the web of reason. The principle of sufficient reason teaches us that nothing in the world is without explanation, no moment is without purpose. In the quiet depths of sleep, let this thought bring you peace, knowing that the universe, while vast and mysterious, is ultimately governed by reason, and that you too are part of that reason. As you begin to sink deeper into sleep, imagine, if you will, a world where happiness is the ultimate goal. A world where every decision, every action, is weighed against its potential to bring about the greatest good for the greatest number. This is the core of utilitarianism, a moral philosophy developed by thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Utilitarianism asks us to consider the consequences of our actions and to strive for a world where happiness, pleasure, and well-being are maximized. According to this view, the right action is the one that produces the most happiness, not just for you, but for everyone involved. It is a philosophy that elevates the collective good above individual desires, urging us to look beyond our own narrow concerns and consider the impact of our actions on the broader world. In a world governed by utilitarian ethics, the question is simple: what will bring the greatest happiness? But this simplicity belies the complexity of real-life decisions. After all, how do we measure happiness? How do we know what will lead to the most good? The utilitarian principle requires us to calculate and consider the effects of our actions in a way that takes into account not only our own happiness, but the happiness of others as well. It calls for a balancing of interests, a careful weighing of what will produce the most positive outcome for the greatest number of people. As you rest here, consider this. How often do we make choices based on what is best for others, rather than what is simply best for us? In the quiet of the night, think of moments in your life where your actions may have had a ripple effect on others. When you chose kindness or selflessness, or when you sacrificed your own comfort for the good of another. These moments, however small, reflect the utilitarian ethos, the pursuit of happiness not just for oneself, but for the greater whole. The challenge of utilitarianism, however, lies in its complexity. It is easy to say we should act for the greatest good, but how do we determine what the greatest good is? What if the happiness of one person comes at the cost of another? Is it right to cause harm to a few if it benefits many? Utilitarianism asks us to navigate these difficult questions, to look beyond our immediate desires and think long-term, to consider how our choices impact not just those around us, but the broader world. In these moments before sleep, consider how you, too, have a role in shaping the happiness of those around you. Every action you take, every word you speak, every decision you make, ripples out into the world, creating a chain of effects. And in this ripple, you contribute to the greater good, to the well-being of the collective. Perhaps in small ways, you can make the world a more compassionate place, one where happiness is valued not just for yourself, but for others. The utilitarian philosophy also brings attention to the idea of equality. Happiness, according to utilitarianism, is not more important for one person than it is for another. It challenges us to think about the fairness of our actions, about how we weigh the happiness of others and whether we allow one person's happiness to outweigh another's. It asks us to live with a sense of justice, to create a world where all individuals can experience happiness and well-being, and to consider how our choices align with the larger ethical goal of maximizing the good for all. As you fall deeper into rest, let the thought of happiness, both yours and others, linger in your mind. What if, in every decision, you thought not just about what makes you happy, but about what would contribute to the happiness of others as well? Imagine a world where every choice we make contributes to the greater good, where every action is a step toward a more compassionate and caring world. In this quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, know this: the ethics of happiness asks us to live with awareness, to live in a way that values the happiness of all, not just ourselves. It is a call to contribute to the well-being of the world in meaningful ways and to choose, in each moment, actions that can create joy, connection, and a sense of shared humanity. And in this pursuit, you may find that your own happiness becomes part of a larger, more profound whole. As the quiet of the night deepens around you, imagine yourself standing at the beginning of a great journey. Before you take a single step, a voice calls out. Imagine you know nothing of who you are. You don't know where you will be born, or to whom. You don't know your race, your gender, your wealth, or your abilities. This thought experiment, known as the veil of ignorance, was introduced by philosopher John Rawls in his theory of justice. The idea is both simple and profound. To create a fair society, we must make decisions about its structure without knowing where we, as individuals, will end up. In other words, we must imagine a world where we are behind a veil that obscures our knowledge of our own personal circumstances. This veil forces us to consider what is truly just and fair, as we are unable to make choices that benefit only ourselves. Rawls argues that if we truly do not know where we will end up in life, we would make decisions about society that ensure fairness and equality for all. We would want to create a system that protects the most vulnerable, that guarantees equality of opportunity, and that ensures that no one is left behind. This is because, behind the veil of ignorance, we understand that we could end up as anyone, rich or poor, healthy or ill, privileged or oppressed. And so we would design society to ensure that everyone is treated with fairness and dignity, regardless of their position in life. As you lay here, slipping deeper into sleep, think about this. If you didn't know who you were, how would you want the world to be structured? Would you want to live in a world where the most fortunate have all the power and resources while others struggle? Or would you want a world where justice is blind, where opportunity is available to all, regardless of their circumstances? The veil of ignorance asks us to put aside our personal interests and think about what is truly fair, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. This thought experiment forces us to recognize the deep interconnectedness of humanity. In a just society, Rawls argues, we should act as though the most vulnerable among us are the ones we are most responsible for. The veil of ignorance reminds us that we should strive for fairness, equality, and justice, because we could, at any moment, be the ones who are disadvantaged. In this quiet space before sleep, consider the implications of Rawls' theory. How often do we make decisions that benefit ourselves at the expense of others? How often do we forget the realities of those who are less fortunate, less visible, or less heard? The veil of ignorance calls us to look beyond our own experiences and see the world from the perspective of all. To recognize that the well-being of one is tied to the well-being of all. But Rawls' theory does not suggest that we should seek to make everyone equal in every way. Instead, he offers a more nuanced view. We should aim for fairness, not uniformity. Inequalities, he argues, are only justifiable if they benefit the least advantaged members of society. This view invites us to reflect on the structures of society and ask, are our systems designed to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of where they start? Or do they favor the few at the expense of the many? As you drift further into the embrace of sleep, let Rawls' veil of ignorance linger in your thoughts. Imagine a world where we could all make decisions not based on self-interest, but on what would create the greatest fairness and justice for all. What kind of society would you create behind that veil if you did not know your place in it? In the silence of the night, allow this question to gently guide your thoughts. How can we, in our daily lives, bring more fairness, more equality, and more justice to the world? It is not just an ideal, it is a challenge to live by. to build a world that respects the dignity of all people, regardless of their circumstances. The veil of ignorance reminds us that in the end, we are all connected, and the measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. As the quiet of the night envelops you and you begin to sink deeper into rest, imagine walking along a path that is neither too narrow nor too wide, neither too steep nor too flat. It is a path that offers balance and harmony, leading you toward a place of peace and fulfillment. This is the essence of Aristotle's concept of the golden mean, a central idea in his ethics. For Aristotle, the good life is one that is lived in balance, where virtues lie between extremes. In his work, Nicomachean Ethics, he explains that virtue is a state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean between deficiency and excess. Courage, for example, lies between the extremes of recklessness, excess, and cowardice, deficiency. Generosity lies between prodigality, excessive generosity, and stinginess, insufficient generosity. In every aspect of life, Aristotle believed, the right action is found in moderation, a balance between extremes. As you rest here, drifting between wakefulness and sleep, think about the balance in your own life. How often do we swing between extremes, perhaps overindulging in the pleasures of life, or depriving ourselves out of fear or self-doubt? Aristotle's golden mean calls us to find the middle ground, to act in ways that are measured, thoughtful, and in alignment with our true nature. It is not about denying ourselves pleasure or avoiding challenges, but about finding a way to live in harmony with the world around us. The golden mean is not a static point, but a dynamic balance. What is moderate for one person may be excessive for another. What is balanced at one point in life may shift as circumstances change. Therefore, the golden mean is a guide, not a rigid rule. It invites us to continually adjust and reflect on our actions, to live with awareness and intention, rather than letting the extremes of desire, fear, or passion control us. As you relax into the quiet, think about the areas in your life where balance is needed. Are there places where you may be leaning too far toward excess, perhaps overworking, overindulging, or overstretching yourself? Or are there places where you may be holding back, afraid to engage fully with life? The golden mean teaches us that moderation is not about mediocrity. It is about living fully and authentically, without letting the extremes dictate our actions. This principle also extends to emotions. Consider, for example, the virtue of anger. Aristotle does not say that we should suppress anger entirely, but rather that we should respond with anger only when it is appropriate and in the right measure. Anger, in moderation, can be a powerful force for justice. But when it is excessive or uncontrolled, it can lead to harm. The same is true for joy, fear, and other emotions. Finding the middle ground allows us to navigate life with grace, understanding, and compassion. In the stillness of the night, think of how you might apply the golden mean in your own life. What is the balance you seek? In every decision, in every action, you are invited to choose the path that brings harmony, not just for yourself, but for the world around you. This path, though sometimes difficult to find, is the one that leads to fulfillment, to a life that is rich with meaning and purpose. And as you drift off to sleep, let the idea of balance fill your thoughts. Like the steady rhythm of your breath, life itself is a dance of moderation. A constant adjustment between extremes, a harmonious flow between being and becoming. The golden mean teaches us to embrace life fully, without overindulging or retreating. It asks us to find peace in the center, where true virtue resides. As you drift deeper into sleep, your thoughts may begin to wander to the mysteries of the world, the questions that we ponder in times of peace and in times of struggle. One such question that echoes through human history is this: why is there suffering in the world? It is a question that has plagued philosophers, theologians, and thinkers for centuries. The problem of evil, the question of why a benevolent, omnipotent God would allow evil and suffering to exist in the world, is one of the central dilemmas in the philosophy of religion. The question seems simple, yet its complexity has sparked endless debate and contemplation. At the heart of the problem of evil lies a contradiction. If God is all-powerful and all-good, why does evil exist at all? If God has the ability to stop suffering and the desire to do so, then why does suffering persist? Why do innocent people suffer? Why is there pain, injustice, and evil in the world? One traditional response to the problem of evil is known as the free will defense. This argument, often attributed to philosophers like Augustine, suggests that evil is a consequence of human free will. According to this view, God gave humans the freedom to choose their actions, and with that freedom comes the possibility of choosing evil. Without the ability to choose, we would be mere puppets, unable to love or act morally. Therefore, the existence of evil is a necessary consequence of human freedom, an inevitable part of the gift of free will. As you lay here, listening to the quiet rhythm of your thoughts, consider this: is it possible that suffering exists because it is a part of the greater design of free will? Could it be that, in allowing for the possibility of evil, God has given humanity the ability to choose love, goodness, and kindness, even in a world where suffering is inevitable? If we are to truly experience compassion, generosity, and justice, must there not be a contrast, a backdrop of suffering and evil that allows these virtues to shine? Yet, even as this argument offers an explanation, it does not fully resolve the tension between God's goodness and the existence of evil. What about the suffering of the innocent? The pain that seems to serve no purpose, the tragedy that befalls those who have no power to choose. This is where the problem becomes even more complex. Why should the innocent suffer if suffering is a consequence of human choices? Think for a moment, as you rest, about the challenges you have faced in your own life. How have these challenges shaped you? How have the moments of pain, loss, or hardship led you to grow, to understand yourself and the world around you more deeply? The soul-making view suggests that suffering is not in vain. It is part of a larger process of growth, a way of transforming adversity into strength, wisdom, and compassion. But still, the problem remains. Even if suffering serves a purpose, why must there be so much of it? Why must the innocent suffer? Why must children and the powerless endure pain? These questions remain unanswered, and for many, they are part of the great mystery of life itself. As you slip deeper into sleep, allow yourself to reflect on this mystery. The problem of evil invites us to confront the deepest aspects of our existence: the nature of good and evil, the role of suffering, and the possibility of redemption. It challenges us to consider the ways in which we respond to suffering, both in our own lives and in the lives of others. In the end, the question of evil may not have a simple answer. Perhaps the purpose of suffering is not something we can fully comprehend, but something we must experience, something that shapes our character and our understanding of the world. Perhaps the true answer lies not in finding a resolution to the problem, but in the way we choose to live in response to it. By acting with compassion, with love, and with the hope that, even in the face of suffering, we can make the world a better place. As you sink deeper into the calm of sleep, imagine for a moment a city that is not simply made of buildings and streets, but of ideals. A city where every person, every action, every relationship is in harmony with a higher vision of what is just and good. This vision of justice is at the heart of Plato's Republic, a work that explores the nature of justice, not just in the individual, but in society as a whole. For Plato, justice is not merely about following laws or abiding by rules. It is about harmony, about finding the right balance between the different parts of the soul and between the different classes of society. In his ideal city, Plato imagines a society where each individual contributes to the common good in the role best suited to their abilities, creating a world where justice is achieved when everyone fulfills their proper role. In the Republic, justice is defined as the principle that everyone should do what they are best suited to do and nothing else. This idea is rooted in the belief that the human soul is made up of three parts: the rational part, the spirited part, and the appetitive part. The rational part seeks truth and knowledge. The spirited part desires honor and courage, and the appetitive part craves physical pleasures and comforts. Justice, for Plato, arises when the rational part of the soul governs the other two, ensuring that each part fulfills its proper role in harmony with the others. As you rest here, drifting toward sleep, think about the harmony of the soul. When the mind is calm, when the heart is at peace, and when desires are in balance, is this not the essence of justice? Plato's idea of justice is not just a social contract. It is an internal state of being, where reason governs the passions and we act in accordance with our true nature. In his ideal society, Plato divides people into three classes: the rulers, philosopher kings, the guardians, warriors, and the producers, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Each class has its own role to play, and justice is achieved when each class performs its duties without interfering with the others. The rulers are wise and knowledgeable, guiding the city with their understanding of the forms, the eternal truths that underlie reality. The guardians are courageous, defending the city and ensuring that it remains safe. The producers provide for the material needs of the society, ensuring that the city is well supplied and prosperous. This vision of justice invites us to consider our own roles in society. What is your role in the world? What is your contribution to the greater good? In a world that often encourages competition and self-interest, Plato reminds us that true justice comes when we work together in harmony, when we each fulfill our unique role, and when we act not just for ourselves, but for the well-being of all. As you lie here, quietly reflecting, consider what justice means in your own life. Is it about fulfilling your role, your duty, to the best of your ability? Is it about seeking harmony within yourself and in your relationships with others? Plato teaches us that justice is not just about external laws or societal structures. It is an inner state of being, a balance between the parts of the soul that enables us to live a virtuous and harmonious life. Perhaps, in the quiet of the night, we can find justice not just in the world around us, but within ourselves. Just as the ideal city is built on harmony, so too is our inner peace built on the balance between our desires, our passions, and our reason. When we live in accordance with our true nature, when we fulfill our unique purpose with wisdom, courage, and temperance, we create a sense of justice that radiates outward, touching the world around us. And as you drift further into sleep, let this thought linger with you. Justice is not just about following rules. It is about finding balance, living with purpose, and contributing to the well-being of all. It is about fulfilling your role in the grand tapestry of life. And in doing so, helping to create a world that is harmonious, just, and good. As the tranquil quiet of the night deepens, imagine a world that is not the one you see with your eyes, but a world that lies beyond appearances, beyond the fleeting shadows of the physical world. In this world, there is perfection, there is truth, there is beauty, the purest, most unchanging essence of things. This is the realm of Plato's forms, a concept that has fascinated thinkers for over 2,000 years. In The Republic and other works, Plato argues that the world we experience with our senses is only a shadow of a higher, more perfect reality. The physical world, as we see it, is full of imperfection, change, and decay. But beyond this world lies the realm of forms, eternal, unchanging ideals that represent the true essence of things. For Plato, the physical world is a mere reflection of these perfect forms. The objects and experiences we encounter are flawed imitations of the perfect versions that exist in the realm of forms. For example, when you see a beautiful object, whether it be a painting, a sunset, or a person, what you are actually perceiving is only an imperfect copy of the perfect form of beauty itself. The same is true for concepts like justice, goodness, and truth. We experience these concepts in their imperfect material forms, but the true forms of justice, goodness, and truth exist beyond the physical world, untouched by time or change. As you rest here, sinking deeper into sleep, think about this. What if everything you experience, the beauty you see, the love you feel, the truth you seek, is only a reflection of something greater, something more perfect, that lies just beyond your reach? What if the things we call beautiful, just, or good are mere echoes of the perfect, unchanging forms that exist in the realm of the eternal? Plato suggests that the philosopher's task is to seek these forms, to try to understand the higher reality beyond the imperfections of the physical world. The philosopher, in Plato's view, is like someone who is trying to escape the cave of illusion and see the world as it truly is, through the lens of the forms. The philosopher, guided by reason, seeks to understand the true nature of things, to grasp the perfect forms that lie behind the imperfect copies we encounter in our everyday lives. The journey to understanding the forms, however, is not an easy one. It requires the philosopher to transcend the distractions of the physical world and look beyond appearances. It is an intellectual and spiritual journey that leads to a deeper understanding of the nature of reality. Plato uses the allegory of the cave to illustrate this process. In this allegory, prisoners are trapped in a cave, only able to see shadows on the wall. These shadows are their only reality. But when one prisoner escapes the cave and sees the world outside, he realizes that the shadows are mere reflections of the true objects in the world. As you drift further into sleep, think about the way you perceive the world. Do you see things as they truly are? Or are you, like the prisoners in the cave, seeing only shadows? What would it mean to see beyond the surface, to look past the imperfections of the world, and seek the eternal, unchanging truth that lies at the heart of all things? Perhaps in our own lives, we are all seeking the forms, even if we do not recognize it. Every time we experience beauty, justice, or goodness, we are reaching for something beyond ourselves, something perfect, something pure. The concept of the forms invites us to think about the world not just as it is, but as it could be, in its perfect, ideal state. It calls us to look beyond appearances and seek deeper truths, to understand the essence of things, not just their surface. And in this pursuit, we find meaning. we find purpose, and we find connection to something greater than ourselves. So as you rest here, let the idea of the forms guide you. Let it remind you that there is more to reality than what meets the eye. Beneath the imperfections and fleeting moments of life, there is an eternal truth, a perfect ideal, that we are all striving to understand. And even as you sleep, that truth is there, just beyond your grasp, waiting to be discovered as you drift deeper into the comfort of sleep. Imagine for a moment the vastness of your own consciousness, your thoughts, your feelings, your awareness of the world. Now, think about the body in which this consciousness resides. How are the mind and body connected? Are they separate, or are they one? This is the heart of the mind-body problem, a question that has intrigued philosophers for centuries. At the center of this question stands René Descartes, whose ideas about the nature of the mind and body have shaped Western thought for generations. Descartes famously declared, "Cogito, ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. For Descartes, the act of thinking is the essence of existence. The mind, the thinking subject, is the core of who we are. But what of the body? What role does it play in our existence, and how does it relate to the mind? Descartes argued that the mind and body are two distinct substances. The mind is immaterial, non-physical, and conscious. It is the seat of thought, of reason, and of awareness. The body, on the other hand, is material and governed by the laws of physics. It is made of matter, and it exists in the physical world, subject to the same rules that govern all physical things. For Descartes, the mind is separate from the body, a belief known as dualism. The mind is the realm of thought, while the body is the realm of physical processes. As you rest here, drifting between wakefulness and sleep, think about this distinction. What does it mean to have a mind and a body? Can we truly separate the two? If the mind is the seat of our thoughts, our consciousness, and our identity, how does it relate to the body, the physical vessel that allows us to interact with the world? Can the mind exist without the body? Can the body function without the mind? Descartes' dualism invites us to consider the mind as something that transcends the physical world. The mind is not subject to the same limitations as the body. It is free to think, to reason, to contemplate. The body, on the other hand, is constrained by the laws of nature. Its movements, its health, its sensations are all determined by physical processes. But how do these two substances interact? How does an immaterial mind cause a physical body to move? How do thoughts translate into action? Descartes famously speculated that the mind and body interacted through the pineal gland, but the exact mechanism of their connection remains one of the most challenging aspects of dualism. Descartes' dualism has been challenged by many, including modern materialist philosophers, who argue that the mind is not separate from the body at all. Instead, the mind is a product of the physical brain and its processes. The mind, in this view, is not some immaterial substance, but the result of complex interactions between neurons, chemicals, and electrical impulses in the brain. In this way, the mind and body are not two separate entities, but one unified system, an idea known as monism. As you rest here, consider the implications of this. If the mind is a product of the body, does this change how we think about consciousness? Does it mean that our thoughts, our memories, our awareness are simply the result of physical processes, and that once the body ceases to function, so too does the mind? Or is there something eternal, something transcendent about the mind that exists beyond the physical body? The mind-body problem remains one of the greatest mysteries in philosophy and science. As you slip deeper into sleep, think about the connection between your own mind and body. How do your thoughts shape your physical experiences? And how do your physical sensations influence your mind? Perhaps, in the end, the mind and body are not truly separate, but two aspects of the same experience. An experience that is both deeply physical and profoundly conscious. In this peaceful moment before sleep, allow yourself to rest in the mystery of it all. The mind, the body, and the connection between them are not problems to be solved, but wonders to be contemplated. And as you drift deeper into rest, embrace the beauty of being. A being that is both mind and body, thought and action, conscious and alive. As the silence of the night deepens, imagine for a moment a world without limits, a world where you are free to create your own destiny, to shape your own path. What would it be like to live without constraints, to be fully in charge of your own existence? This vision of boundless freedom is at the heart of Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, often translated as the Superman or Overman. Nietzsche, one of the most influential philosophers of the 19th century, challenged traditional ideas about morality, society, and human potential. In his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he presents the Übermensch as the ideal figure, a person who has transcended the limitations imposed by conventional morality and societal norms, and who creates their own values and meaning in life. For Nietzsche, the Übermensch represents the fullest expression of human potential. It is not about being a superhuman in the literal sense, but about overcoming the herd mentality, the limiting beliefs that keep individuals trapped in mediocrity. The Übermensch is the individual who rejects the conventional moral systems, those that, according to Nietzsche, stifle creativity, passion, and true freedom, and instead embraces a life of self-overcoming, of constant growth and transformation. As you rest here, let the idea of the Übermensch stir your thoughts. What would it mean to live without the constraints of society's expectations? What would it feel like to break free from the limits imposed by tradition, culture, or fear? Nietzsche's vision calls for a life lived with intensity, with purpose, and with a commitment to becoming who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be. It is a call to live authentically, to embrace your own power, and to shape your life according to your own desires and principles. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch is closely linked to his rejection of the traditional moral system of slave morality, a system that he believed was built on weakness, fear, and subservience. Slave morality, Nietzsche argued, was created by the powerless to justify their suffering, and it celebrates virtues like humility, meekness, and self-sacrifice. In contrast, the Übermensch embodies master morality, which values strength, independence, and the affirmation of life. The Übermensch is not concerned with conforming to the values of others, but with creating their own values, their own meaning, and their own destiny. But the path to becoming the Übermensch is not an easy one. It requires a willingness to confront discomfort, to challenge deeply held beliefs, and to be courageous in the face of uncertainty. The Übermensch is not defined by societal approval nor by external validation, but by an internal commitment to self-mastery and self-creation. It is the path of the individual who dares to live fully, without fear, without restraint. As you lie here, reflecting in the stillness of the night, think about this. In your own life, how often do you allow the opinions, judgments, and expectations of others to shape your actions? How often do you hold yourself back from pursuing your true desires, from stepping into the fullness of who you are? Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch invites us to ask ourselves, what would it mean to live without fear, to live boldly, to create our own values and meaning? The Übermensch is not a static ideal, but a continual process of becoming, of shedding the old self, of overcoming the limitations of the past, and of embracing new possibilities. It is the journey of self-transformation, a journey that calls us to reach for the highest version of ourselves, not in comparison to others, but in alignment with our deepest potential. As you slip deeper into sleep, let the thought of the Übermensch linger with you. It is not an unattainable ideal, but a challenge, an invitation to live your life with purpose, to transcend the limitations that hold you back, and to become the person you are truly meant to be. In this journey of self-overcoming, you discover not just who you are, but who you are capable of becoming. As the darkness of the night envelops you, imagine a world that seems both vast and indifferent, a world where we, as humans, strive for meaning, but often find only silence in return. In the face of this silence, what is our response? This is the essence of the absurd, a concept famously explored by the philosopher Albert Camus. In his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus presents the idea that life is inherently meaningless. The world, he argues, does not offer us answers, nor does it provide any ultimate purpose or justification for our existence. We seek meaning, but the universe remains indifferent. This creates a profound sense of disconnection, a tension between our desire for meaning and the meaninglessness of the world. Camus's exploration of the absurd begins with the realization that human beings naturally seek purpose, reason, and clarity in their lives. We search for understanding, for a reason to live, for something to hold on to. Yet, in our search, we encounter the absurd, the recognition that the universe offers no answers, no grand design, and no inherent meaning. This is the paradox that Camus describes, the tension between our longing for purpose and the lack of meaning in the world around us. As you rest here, let this thought settle gently in your mind. What does it mean to live in a world where meaning is elusive? How do we respond to the absurd, to the realization that life may not have a grand purpose, no matter how much we yearn for one? The absurd is not a nihilistic rejection of life, but a challenge to live fully in the face of meaninglessness. Camus suggests that we must not turn away from the absurd, nor should we succumb to despair. Instead, we must acknowledge the absurdity of life and choose to live anyway, with full awareness of its lack of inherent meaning. Camus uses the myth of Sisyphus as a metaphor for the human condition. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus is condemned to roll a boulder up a mountain, only for it to roll back down every time he reaches the top. His task is futile, repetitive, and ultimately meaningless. And yet, Camus argues, Sisyphus embodies the human condition. Like him, we are often caught in repetitive, seemingly pointless tasks, trying to make sense of a world that offers no ultimate purpose. But instead of resigning ourselves to despair, Camus suggests that we can find meaning in the struggle itself, in the act of living with full awareness of the absurd. In these quiet moments before sleep, think about your own life. How often do you search for meaning in the things you do, in the relationships you have, or in the accomplishments you achieve? How often do you feel that the world does not offer answers, that life's inherent meaninglessness seems to stare back at you? Camus' philosophy invites us to stop searching for a grand purpose and to accept the absurd. Once we do, we are free to live fully in the present, to embrace life's struggles, joys, and challenges without the need for external justification. The absurd, Camus tells us, does not diminish the value of life. It enhances it. When we recognize the lack of inherent meaning, we are freed from the constraints of traditional expectations, and we can live more authentically. Instead of seeking answers that may never come, we find meaning in our actions, in our relationships, and in the experience of living itself. The absurd is not something to escape from. It is something to embrace, to live with, and to find freedom in. As you drift deeper into sleep, let the thought of the absurd settle quietly within you. Life may not provide us with a grand narrative, but it offers us the opportunity to live with awareness, to act with intention, and to find meaning in the very act of existing. The absurd invites us to live without illusions, to face the truth of our condition, and to find beauty and strength in the struggle itself. As you relax into the stillness of the night, let your mind begin to explore the very nature of perception itself. How do you know the world around you? How do you experience the things you see, feel, and touch? This question lies at the heart of phenomenology, a philosophical approach developed by Edmund Husserl and later expanded by Maurice Merleau-Ponty. Phenomenology seeks to understand how we experience the world, not as detached observers, but as embodied beings who are deeply engaged with the world around us. For Merleau-Ponty, perception is not simply a passive reception of sensory data, but an active, embodied process that shapes our experience of reality. In his work, Phenomenology of Perception, Merleau-Ponty argues that perception is rooted in the body. We do not merely observe the world from a distance, but interact with it directly through our senses and our movements. Our body is not just a vessel that contains our consciousness. It is the medium through which we experience the world. It is the way we live in the world. And through it, we come to understand reality. As you rest here, think about the way you experience the world. When you look at a tree, you don't just see its shape and color. You feel its presence, its texture, its meaning. When you hear music, you don't just process sound. You feel it. You move with it. It becomes a part of you. Perception, Merleau-Ponty suggests, is not a passive activity. It is a lived experience, something that involves our entire being, our senses, our emotions, our body, and our mind. Our body is not a separate object in the world, but an integral part of it, and through it, we make sense of our surroundings. Merleau-Ponty's philosophy invites us to reconsider the nature of perception. Often, we think of perception as something objective, something that happens in our minds as we process sensory information. But Merleau-Ponty argues that perception is deeply subjective. It is shaped by our body, our history, our emotions, and our context. Every experience is unique because every person's body and perspective are unique. Perception is not just a passive reflection of the world. It is a dynamic process that involves our active engagement with the world. In these quiet moments before sleep, reflect on how you experience the world. How does your body shape your perception of reality? When you touch a surface, when you hear a sound, when you see a color, what is it that you are actually experiencing? Merleau-Ponty's philosophy reminds us that perception is not just an external process. It is an internal one, shaped by our senses, our thoughts, and our very being. We are not passive observers of the world, but active participants in it. This idea has profound implications for how we think about reality. If perception is not merely about processing sensory data, but about living in the world with our body, then reality is not something fixed and objective. It is something we engage with, something we shape and experience through our embodied consciousness. Reality, in this sense, is not a detached set of facts. It is a lived experience, something that emerges from the interplay between our body, our mind, and the world around us. As you slip deeper into sleep, let this thought settle in. Your experience of the world is not merely the result of passive observation. You are an active participant in the creation of reality. Your body, your senses, and your consciousness are intricately woven together, creating a unique and rich experience of the world. Perception is not simply something that happens to you. It is something that you do, something that you live. The phenomenology of perception invites us to embrace this deeper, more intimate understanding of reality. It asks us to recognize that the world is not just something we observe from a distance. It is something we live, something we engage with, and something we shape through our very being. As you drift gently into the deepening quiet of sleep, think about the world you live in. How do you approach it? How do you make sense of the vast array of experiences, challenges, and choices that shape your life? This is the essence of pragmatism, a philosophical approach that places emphasis on the practical consequences of ideas, as pioneered by thinkers like William James. For James, the value of an idea or belief is not found in its abstract truth or theoretical purity, but in its practical utility. Pragmatism asks, does this belief or idea work in the real world? Does it help us navigate life, make better decisions, or solve problems? If it does, then it is valuable. At the core of pragmatism is the idea that our thoughts, beliefs, and concepts are tools. They are not absolute truths that exist independently of human experience, but are instead instruments we use to navigate and make sense of the world. The meaning of an idea, for James, is found in its effects, in the consequences it brings about in the world. If a belief leads to practical results, then it is true in a pragmatic sense. As you lie here at the threshold of sleep, think about your own beliefs. How often do you hold on to ideas simply because they have always been accepted or because they sound logically true? James encourages us to step back and ask, does this belief work for me? Does it lead to action, growth, or understanding in my life? What matters is not whether a belief is metaphysically correct or universally accepted, but whether it helps us lead a better, more functional life. Pragmatism does not deny the importance of truth, but it redefines what truth means. For James, truth is not something fixed or unchanging, but something that evolves with experience. Truth is not something we discover once and for all. It is something we test, refine, and adapt through our interactions with the world. In this sense, truth is dynamic, not static. It is a process of continual inquiry and adjustment based on what works and what doesn't. Think for a moment about how you approach problems in your life. How often do you hold on to ideas or strategies simply because they are familiar or traditional, even when they no longer serve you? Pragmatism invites us to be flexible, to consider what works, what leads to positive outcomes, and to adapt accordingly. It challenges us to let go of rigid beliefs and to embrace a more experimental, flexible approach to life. James also proposed that belief itself can be a transformative force. When we adopt a belief, we bring it into our lives, and it shapes the way we interact with the world. Belief, in the pragmatic sense, is not just an intellectual exercise. It is something that motivates action, something that has real consequences. In this way, our beliefs shape the reality we experience. By choosing beliefs that are practical, empowering, and life-enhancing, we can shape our experience of the world in meaningful ways. As you rest here, think about the beliefs that guide your life. How have they helped or hindered you in your journey? What beliefs do you hold that could be tested and refined? Pragmatism teaches us that our ideas are not fixed truths, but tools for living. And if these tools no longer serve us, it is within our power to reshape them, to adopt new beliefs, or to try new paths. In the end, pragmatism is a call to live more consciously and intentionally. It is an invitation to test our ideas, to be open to change, and to focus not on abstract concepts or theoretical truths, but on the practical, everyday reality of how we live, how we act, and how we grow. It asks us to value what works, what helps us navigate life's challenges, and what brings us closer to the life we want to create. So, as you slip deeper into sleep, let this thought guide you. The meaning of life is not found in rigid doctrines or fixed truths, but in the way we interact with the world and adapt to it. The truth is in the doing, in the living, in the choices we make, and in the consequences that follow. As the night wraps you in its quiet embrace, imagine standing at the edge of an open expanse, a vast emptiness before you. No paths, no guideposts, only the boundless possibility of the unknown. In this space, you are free, free to create your own direction, free to define yourself. But with this freedom comes a strange feeling, a weight in your chest, a profound sense of unease. This is the essence of existential angst, a central concept in the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre. For Sartre, the human condition is defined by freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. We're not born with a predetermined essence, a fixed purpose. Instead, we exist first, and then we define who we are through our choices, our actions, and our relationships with the world. This radical freedom is both exhilarating and terrifying. It means that we are fully responsible for ourselves, for creating our own values and meaning in life, and that no one, no system, no religion, no tradition can define us except ourselves. As you lay here drifting toward sleep, consider this. What does it mean to be free? To be truly free is not just to do whatever you want, but to accept that you alone are responsible for your choices. There is no one else to blame, no external forces that can determine your path. This freedom is liberating, but it also brings with it a sense of anguish. For when you are free to define yourself, you are also burdened with the weight of that responsibility. Sartre calls this feeling angst, the anxiety that arises from the awareness of our complete freedom and responsibility. It is the recognition that we are not just the products of our past or our circumstances. We are the creators of our own lives. In a world that often feels uncertain and chaotic, this freedom can be overwhelming. We are thrown into existence without a map, without a guide, and must navigate the vastness of life on our own terms. But Sartre's existentialism does not see this angst as something to be feared or avoided. Rather, it is a vital part of being human. Existential angst, Sartre argues, is the consciousness of our freedom. It is the awareness that, in every moment, we are choosing who we are becoming, and that this choice is both a privilege and a burden. It is the moment when we realize that we are not merely existing according to the roles and expectations imposed by society. We are creating ourselves, moment by moment, through our choices. As you drift further into sleep, think about the moments in your life when you have felt this kind of existential angst. Perhaps it was a moment of decision, when you faced a choice that could shape the course of your life. Perhaps it was a feeling of uncertainty, when the future seemed open and unformed, and you felt the weight of responsibility in shaping it. Sartre teaches us that these moments of unease, though uncomfortable, are essential to our freedom. They remind us that we are not bound by the past or by anyone else's definition of us. We are free to choose, free to create, free to live authentically. But with this freedom comes a challenge. We must own our choices. Sartre rejects the idea of an essential self, one that is defined by external forces or predetermined values. Instead, he argues that we are constantly creating our essence through our actions. We are what we choose to become. So, as you rest here, allow yourself to reflect on this freedom. In your life, where do you feel the weight of choice? Where do you feel the pull of existential angst? The sense of being both free and responsible for who you are. Sartre's existentialism asks us to embrace this freedom, to live authentically and courageously, to accept the responsibility of creating our own meaning in a world that offers none. The key, according to Sartre, is not to shrink away from this responsibility, but to embrace it fully. Existential angst, in its purest form, is not a sign of despair, but of freedom. It is the awareness that we are the authors of our own lives, and that in every moment we have the power to shape our own destiny. As you rest here, the stillness of the night surrounding you, imagine for a moment a world where relationships, empathy, and interconnectedness form the foundation of morality. What if the central ethical concern was not about abstract rules or universal principles, but about the care we give to others and the care we receive in return? This is the heart of the ethics of care. A feminist philosophical approach that challenges traditional moral theories by emphasizing the importance of relationships, empathy, and nurturing care in our ethical lives. While much of traditional Western philosophy, from Aristotle to Kant, has focused on abstract principles like justice, duty, and autonomy, the ethics of care draws attention to the concrete, relational aspects of human life. It suggests that morality is not about following impersonal rules, but about responding to the needs of others with sensitivity, compassion, and responsibility. The ethics of care emerged as a response to the limitations of traditional moral theories. It was developed by feminist philosophers like Carol Gilligan, who argued that conventional moral theories often overlook the experiences and perspectives of women and marginalized groups. Traditional ethics, she claimed, tends to prioritize abstract notions of justice, fairness, and rights. Concepts that are often detached from the lived experiences of individuals, particularly those in caregiving roles. In her influential work, In a Different Voice, Gilligan showed that moral development in women often takes a different path than that of men. While men may focus more on principles of justice and individual rights, women are often more attuned to the dynamics of relationships, interdependence, and emotional connection. The ethics of care, therefore, emphasizes the moral importance of caregiving, the act of attending to the needs of others, particularly in personal and intimate contexts like family, friendship, and community. As you lie here, letting your mind relax, think about the relationships that shape your life. How do you care for those around you? How do you receive care? The ethics of care teaches us that moral life is rooted in our connections to others. It is not about following abstract rules, but about being present for those who need us, being attuned to their needs, and responding with empathy and responsibility. The ethics of care also challenges the idea of autonomy that is central to many moral theories. In traditional ethics, individuals are often seen as autonomous, independent agents who must act according to universal principles. The ethics of care, however, stresses that our moral lives are deeply embedded in relationships of interdependence. No one is fully autonomous. Our lives are shaped by the care we give and the care we receive. The ethics of care asks us to recognize this interconnectedness and to take responsibility for maintaining the relationships that nurture and sustain us. In the quiet of the night, reflect on this. How often do we prioritize abstract ideals over the actual care of others? How often do we overlook the emotional and relational aspects of moral life in favor of impersonal rules? The ethics of care invites us to reconsider what it means to live a moral life. It asks us to recognize the moral value of caregiving, to acknowledge the importance of empathy and connection, and to see that our moral responsibilities lie not in abstract principles, but in the concrete, everyday relationships we cultivate. In a world that often values individual achievement and success, the ethics of care reminds us that true moral flourishing comes from caring for others, from being present in the lives of those who depend on us. It is not enough to act according to rules. We must engage with the world with compassion, with an understanding that our actions affect others and that our primary responsibility is to foster the well-being of those around us. So, as you drift deeper into sleep, let the idea of care fill your thoughts. Imagine a world where relationships are at the center of moral life, where empathy and compassion are the guiding principles, and where the needs of others are prioritized alongside our own. The ethics of care calls us to nurture, to love, and to be present in the lives of those we care for. It is a call to live ethically, not in isolation, but in a web of connections that define and sustain us. As you drift deeper into the quiet embrace of sleep, imagine a world where everything is connected, where the very fabric of society is made up of relationships, struggles, and shared experiences. Imagine that the world around you is not just a collection of isolated individuals, but a complex network of forces that shape and define your life. This is the essence of Marxism, a philosophical, political, and economic framework developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the 19th century. Marxism seeks to understand the world not through individual actions or isolated events, but through the lens of social structures, class relations, and the dynamics of power that shape human life. For Marx, the key to understanding society lies in recognizing its social nature, the fact that human beings are inherently social creatures, whose lives are deeply intertwined with the economic and political systems around them. At the heart of Marxism is the idea that society is divided into classes, with each class having its own interests, struggles, and roles. The two main classes, in Marx's analysis, are the bourgeoisie, the owners of the means of production, and the proletariat, the working class. The bourgeoisie controls the production of goods and services, while the proletariat is forced to sell its labor to survive. This division creates inherent inequality, exploitation, and oppression, as the bourgeoisie profits from the labor of the proletariat, while the workers receive only a fraction of the value they create. As you rest here, think about this. What role do you play in the world around you? How are your actions, your choices, and your life shaped by the social structures that surround you? Marxism teaches us that we are not isolated individuals who exist independently of society. Rather, we are embedded in a network of relationships that shape our lives in profound ways. Our experiences, our values, and our desires are deeply influenced by the economic and political systems in which we live. Marxism also introduces the idea of alienation, which describes the sense of disconnection and powerlessness that workers experience in capitalist societies. Under capitalism, workers are alienated from the products of their labor. from the process of production, and from each other. Work becomes a means of survival rather than a fulfilling activity, and the worker is treated as a commodity rather than a human being. In the quiet of the night, reflect on this. How often do we feel disconnected from the things we create, from the work we do, or from the people around us? Marx's concept of alienation reminds us that our sense of fulfillment and meaning is not found in isolation or in the pursuit of personal success alone. It is found in the relationships we form, in the ways we connect with others, and in the systems that support or hinder our well-being. As you lie here, gently drifting toward sleep, think about the ways in which your life is shaped by the social and economic systems around you. How often do you find yourself caught in the struggle for survival, for success, or for recognition? How often do you feel disconnected from the larger purpose of your work or from the people you share your life with? Marxism invites us to see these struggles not as isolated events, but as part of a larger social structure, one that is constantly in flux, constantly being shaped by the forces of power and class. At its core, Marxism calls us to recognize the social nature of our existence. We are not isolated beings. We are part of a larger social fabric, and our lives are deeply influenced by the systems and structures that surround us. Understanding this interconnectedness is the first step toward creating a more just and equitable society, one where the needs of the many are prioritized over the desires of the few. So as you slip into the quiet of sleep, let this thought settle within you. Your life is part of a larger whole, shaped by the forces of society, and that understanding opens up the possibility for change, for transformation, and for a more just world. The key is recognizing our shared humanity and the power of collective action to shape the future. As the soft, rhythmic flow of your breath settles into the quiet of the night, think for a moment about time. What is it? How do we experience it? Is it something external, something that passes regardless of our awareness? Or is it something deeply personal, something we feel within the very fabric of our being? This question has been explored by many, but one of the most profound answers comes from the philosopher Martin Heidegger, whose work focuses on the existential nature of human life. Heidegger's concept of time is not the ticking of a clock or the measuring of moments. For Heidegger, time is deeply connected to our experience of being in the world. It is an essential part of what it means to be human. In his seminal work, Being in Time, Heidegger presents a revolutionary view of time. He argues that time is not something external to us, something that passes independent of our existence. Instead, time is a fundamental aspect of our being. For Heidegger, our very existence is structured by time, and time itself is inextricably linked to our awareness of our own mortality. We live in time, and through time, we understand the world and ourselves. As you rest here, sinking deeper into the stillness, consider this. How do you experience time? Do you see it as something that moves forward relentlessly, pushing you from one moment to the next? Or do you feel that time is something more intimate, something that shapes your sense of self, your choices, and your understanding of your place in the world? Heidegger introduces the concept of being toward death, the recognition that our existence is finite. Time, for Heidegger, is not an infinite expanse that stretches out endlessly. It is bounded by our mortality, and this awareness of our own death is what gives time its urgency and meaning. In this way, time is not simply something we experience in the abstract. It is a lived reality, something that influences every choice we make, every relationship we form, and every moment we experience. Heidegger suggests that most people live in a state of inauthenticity, moving through life without fully confronting their own mortality. We tend to get lost in the busyness of the world, caught up in routine and distractions, never fully acknowledging the passage of time or the fact that our lives are finite. But for Heidegger, authenticity arises when we face the reality of death directly. When we acknowledge that our time is limited, we can begin to live more fully, with greater awareness and intention. As you lie here, think about the ways in which time shapes your life. How often do you live in a state of distraction, moving from one moment to the next without truly being present? How often do you push aside the awareness of your own mortality, choosing instead to focus on the future or the past? Heidegger calls us to embrace the present, to live in a way that is aware of time's passing, but not dominated by it. To live authentically is to live in full awareness of time, not as something that happens to us, but as something that we are actively engaged with, every moment of every day. The concept of time in Heidegger's philosophy is not merely about the ticking of a clock. It is about being in time, about understanding our existence as something shaped by time, limited by time, and yet deeply connected to the ongoing flow of time. Time is not a passive backdrop to our lives. It is an active, integral part of who we are, how we experience the world, and how we understand ourselves. As you drift further into sleep, consider how you might live more authentically with time. What does it mean to live fully in each moment, knowing that time is finite? How might the awareness of your mortality deepen your connection to the present, to the people around you, and to the world itself? Heidegger's view of time invites us to stop seeing it as a distant, abstract concept, and instead to feel it as a part of our very being. Time is not an enemy to be fought, but a gift to be embraced, shaping our lives in ways that are both beautiful and fleeting. As the quiet of the night surrounds you, imagine yourself on a journey, not one of distance, but of inner transformation, where the goal is not a destination, but a state of being. What does it mean to live a good life? What does it mean to be truly virtuous? The quest for virtue is at the heart of Aristotle's ethical philosophy, which centers on the idea of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or happiness. But for Aristotle, this kind of happiness is not a fleeting emotion or a momentary pleasure. It is a deep, enduring state of well-being that comes from living a life in accordance with reason, wisdom, and virtue. In his work Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle suggests that the good life is achieved through the cultivation of virtue, which lies between extremes. Virtue is not an absolute fixed quality. It is a balance, a mean between deficiency and excess. For example, courage lies between recklessness and cowardice. Generosity lies between prodigality, excessive generosity, and stinginess, insufficient generosity. To live virtuously is to find this middle path in every area of life, allowing reason to guide our actions and desires toward the right balance. As you rest here, let these questions linger in your thoughts. What does it mean to live virtuously? What does it mean to pursue the good life? Aristotle's Ethics invites us to reflect on our character, our choices, and the way we interact with the world around us. It asks us to examine whether our actions are guided by reason and a sense of moral purpose, or by mere impulse and desire. For Aristotle, virtues are not innate. They must be cultivated through habit and practice. We become virtuous not by simply understanding what virtue is, but by consistently choosing to act virtuously. Just as a musician becomes skilled through practice, so too does a person become virtuous through repeated acts of good character. Virtue is something that is developed over time, through conscious effort and repeated action. Aristotle's concept of virtue is also deeply connected to the idea of telos, or purpose. Each human being has a unique potential, a purpose that is fulfilled through the cultivation of virtue. This purpose is not just about achieving personal success or wealth, but about becoming the best version of ourselves, realizing our full potential as rational, moral beings. The pursuit of virtue, therefore, is not about following external rules or seeking external rewards. It is about aligning our actions with our true nature, fulfilling our potential in a way that contributes to the well-being of ourselves as in others. In the quiet moments before sleep, reflect on the virtues that guide your life. What is your purpose? And how are your actions aligned with that purpose? Do you strive for balance in your relationships, your work, and your self-care? Virtue is not something that is achieved once and for all. It is a lifelong process of becoming, of striving to live a life that is in harmony with reason, with others, and with the world. Aristotle also emphasizes the importance of community in the cultivation of virtue. While virtue is developed individually, it is nurtured in the context of relationships and society. To live virtuously is to live in harmony with others, to contribute to the well-being of the community. The good life is not one of solitary pursuit, but one that recognizes the interconnectedness of all human beings. As you drift deeper into sleep, think about how you can live more virtuously in your own life. How can you cultivate balance, harmony, and purpose in your actions? What is the best version of yourself that you could become? Aristotle's vision of the good life is not a distant ideal. It is a path that can be walked each day, in every decision, every relationship, and every action. In the quiet of the night, allow this idea to settle within you. The pursuit of virtue is the pursuit of a good life, a life of flourishing, of becoming your truest self. As you lie here, gently slipping into the quiet of sleep, think for a moment about freedom. What does it mean to be free? Is it simply the absence of constraints? Or is it something more complex, something deeper? This is the essence of Isaiah Berlin's exploration of freedom, a central theme in his philosophy. Berlin distinguishes between two types of freedom: negative freedom and positive freedom. Negative freedom, according to Berlin, is the freedom from interference, freedom to do as we wish without others obstructing our actions. This form of freedom is about the absence of external constraints, the ability to act without being hindered by others, society, or the state. As you rest here, think about this. How often do we seek freedom in the form of absence? Absence of restrictions, absence of limitations, absence of others telling us what to do. Negative freedom seems simple, almost instinctive. It's the freedom to live as we choose, to follow our own desires without interference. This form of freedom is often celebrated in liberal democracies, where individual liberty and autonomy are foundational values. But Berlin warns that while negative freedom is essential, it is not enough to capture the full complexity of human freedom. Berlin contrasts this with positive freedom, which is the freedom to act in a way that fulfills our true nature, our potential, and our deepest desires. Positive freedom is not merely about the absence of interference. It is about the presence of something, the ability to realize our true self, to be the person we are meant to be. Positive freedom, in this sense, is not simply a freedom from constraints, but a freedom for something, the freedom to live authentically, to pursue meaningful goals, to become who we truly are. Berlin argues that these two types of freedom, negative and positive, are often in tension. In our pursuit of positive freedom, we may find ourselves imposing constraints on others or even on ourselves in the name of a higher goal or purpose. For example, the state might restrict certain behaviors in order to promote collective well-being or individual flourishing. But this can raise difficult ethical questions. How far should society go in limiting individual freedom for the sake of collective good? How do we balance personal autonomy with the need for social harmony? As you rest here, consider this. How do you experience freedom in your own life? Is your freedom defined by the absence of limitations? Or is it the ability to pursue your true desires, your authentic self? Berlin's distinction between negative and positive freedom invites us to reflect on what it means to be free, not just from external constraints, but toward a more meaningful existence. Berlin also warns that the pursuit of positive freedom can sometimes lead to authoritarianism. When we believe that we know what is best for ourselves or for others, we might be tempted to impose that vision on others, limiting their negative freedom in the process. This is a paradox of freedom. The more we strive for collective or individual flourishing, the more we risk encroaching on the very freedom we wish to protect. In the quiet of the night, let these questions linger in your mind. What does it mean to be truly free? How do you balance the desire for personal autonomy with the pursuit of your deepest aspirations? What does positive freedom look like for you? And how does it differ from the simple desire to be free from interference? Berlin's exploration of freedom teaches us that the concept is complex, multifaceted, and deeply personal. It is not simply about being left alone. It is about realizing our fullest potential, making choices that reflect our true selves, and living a life of meaning and purpose. But this is a path that requires careful consideration of the role of others, the role of society, and the role of our own inner desires. As you drift deeper into sleep, let the idea of freedom resonate with you. Not just the freedom to act without interference, but the freedom to live authentically, to pursue the life you are meant to live. In this stillness, know that freedom is not just the absence of limits, but the presence of possibility. As the quiet of the night deepens and the world outside seems to fade into the background, consider a question that we often ask, though not always aloud. What is the greatest good? What would it mean to live in a world where the ultimate aim is the happiness of the greatest number of people? This question lies at the heart of utilitarianism, a moral philosophy most famously articulated by thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. At the core of utilitarianism is the principle of utility, the idea that the best action is the one that maximizes happiness or pleasure and minimizes suffering or pain for the greatest number of people. The principle is simple in its essence. Actions are morally right if they produce the most good for the most people. For Jeremy Bentham, the founder of utilitarianism, the goal of morality is to produce the greatest amount of happiness, which he believed could be measured in terms of pleasure and pain. He famously argued that all forms of happiness or suffering are equal, regardless of who experiences them. Whether a rich person enjoys a luxury or a poor person finds joy in a simple meal, the principle of utility demands that we maximize the total amount of happiness, with no regard for social status, wealth, or personal identity. As you rest here, think about the idea of the greatest happiness. In a world where resources, time, and opportunities are finite, how do we decide what actions will create the most good for the most people? The principle of utility asks us to consider not only the immediate consequences of our actions, but their wider impact on the lives of others. It calls us to think beyond ourselves and to make choices that promote collective well-being. John Stuart Mill, a later proponent of utilitarianism, expanded upon Bentham's ideas by suggesting that happiness is not merely about pleasure or the absence of pain, but about the quality of pleasure as well. Mill introduced the idea of higher and lower pleasures, arguing that intellectual and moral pleasures are more valuable than physical or sensual pleasures. For Mill, true happiness comes from the cultivation of intellect, creativity, and self-improvement, and not simply from the satisfaction of basic desires. As you lie here, think about this. When you make decisions, how often do you consider the quality of happiness you are creating rather than just the quantity? Mill's concept of higher pleasures invites us to reflect on the deeper aspects of happiness. The kind of happiness that comes from meaningful experiences, personal growth, and the betterment of others. But utilitarianism, while appealing in its simplicity, is not without its challenges. One of the criticisms of this philosophy is that it can justify actions that seem morally wrong, as long as they lead to a greater overall happiness. For example, would it be acceptable to sacrifice the well-being of a few to benefit the many? Utilitarianism raises difficult ethical questions about the balance between individual rights and the collective good. How do we decide where to draw the line? Can we truly calculate the consequences of our actions with accuracy? As you rest, think about how utilitarianism applies to your own life. Do you make decisions based on the greatest good for the greatest number? How often do you weigh your actions against the potential impact they will have on others? The principle of utility challenges us to consider the long-term consequences of our decisions, not just for ourselves, but for everyone involved. In the quiet moments before sleep, reflect on this. What is the greatest good? Is it happiness, wealth, security, or something else? What actions can you take to promote happiness in your own life and in the lives of those around you? Utilitarianism teaches us that moral decisions are not just about personal satisfaction. They are about creating a world where the happiness of others is valued as much as our own. In this way, it calls us to live with a sense of collective responsibility, where the well-being of the many is just as important as the well-being of the individual. As you lie here, gently drifting towards sleep, think about yourself, the person you are, the person you've always been. Who are you? What makes you, you? What gives you continuity across time, even as your body, your thoughts, and your experiences change? This is the central question at the heart of John Locke's philosophy of personal identity. In his essay concerning human understanding, Locke explores what makes a person the same person over time, despite changes in their body, mind, and circumstances. For Locke, personal identity is not tied to the substance of the body or the soul. Instead, it is connected to consciousness, specifically, the continuity of consciousness. Locke's famous theory of personal identity rests on the idea that if you are able to remember past experiences, then you are the same person who lived through those experiences, regardless of the changes in your body. For example, if you remember being a child, Locke would argue that your consciousness connects your past self with your present self, making you the same person across time. It is not your physical body that defines you, nor is it the particular set of memories or thoughts you have, but the continuity of consciousness that binds the different stages of your life together into one cohesive identity. As you rest here, imagine this idea of continuity. In your own life, how do you experience your personal identity? Are you the same person you were yesterday, last year, or when you were a child? Locke's theory asks us to think of identity as a fluid, ever-evolving process, held together by the threads of memory and consciousness. In this way, we are not fixed, static beings, but dynamic entities whose identity is shaped by the ongoing flow of consciousness across time. Locke's theory also introduces a fascinating question about the role of memory. If you lose your memory, do you lose your identity? Could a person's identity be fundamentally altered if they no longer remember who they once were? Locke believed that memory is central to maintaining personal identity. But he also acknowledged the complexity of memory loss, amnesia, or even the possibility of multiple personalities. While memory is key to continuity, he suggests there may be situations where our sense of self is challenged or disrupted. As you reflect on this, think about the role that memory plays in your own sense of self. How do your memories define who you are? What would it mean for your identity if your memories were wiped away or changed? Locke's theory invites us to see personal identity as more than just a set of experiences or physical traits. It is the ongoing awareness of who we have been, who we are, and who we are becoming. But Locke's theory is not without its criticisms. Some philosophers argue that memory alone cannot account for personal identity. For instance, if a person forgets something important, are they no longer the same person even if their consciousness continues? And what about cases of radical changes, like a complete shift in personality or consciousness? Is the person still the same person even if they no longer remember or recognize their past self? These questions remind us that personal identity is a complex and multifaceted issue. It is not just about memory, nor is it only about continuity. It is about the ongoing relationship between our thoughts, experiences, and consciousness. What defines us ultimately is the way we integrate and make sense of our past, present, and future. As you drift further into sleep, let the question of personal identity gently rest in your mind. What makes you you? What holds your sense of self together, even as time moves forward and changes unfold? Locke's theory asks us to see our identity not as a fixed thing, but as something in constant flow, held together by the continuity of consciousness. Remember, the journey of understanding who you are is ongoing. A fluid process that moves through time, shaped by memories, experiences, and the very consciousness that defines your existence. As the night settles in and the world around you quiets, imagine a time long before cities, before governments, before the complex structures of modern society. In this imagined time, human beings lived in harmony with nature, untainted by the forces of civilization. They lived free, uncorrupted, and unburdened by the constraints that society would later impose. Could such a life exist? Was humanity better off in this natural state? This is the essence of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's idea of the noble savage, a concept he explores in his Discourse on the Origin and Basis of Inequality Among Men. Rousseau argues that, in the state of nature, humans were inherently good, free from the corrupting influences of society and civilization. In this natural state, people lived simply, without the need for complex laws, property, or social hierarchies. They were guided by their instincts, by compassion, and by the basic needs of survival. Rousseau's vision of the noble savage is not one of brutality, as often depicted in popular culture, but one of innocence and purity, a life untainted by the egoism, inequality, and conflict that later arose with the development of civilization. As you rest here, sinking deeper into sleep, reflect on this. What would life have been like for humans before the complexities of society? Would we have been freer, more at peace, more connected to one another and to nature? Rousseau's concept of the noble savage suggests that human beings, when left in their natural state, were free from the divisions that later arose in society. Free from the selfish pursuit of wealth, the hierarchical structures of power, and the artificial needs that civilization imposed upon them. Rousseau's critique of civilization is rooted in his belief that the development of private property and the establishment of social hierarchies brought about inequality, greed, and competition. In his view, civilization introduced the corruption of human nature. The introduction of property, for example, led to envy, rivalry, and the desire for power, as people began to accumulate wealth and create distinctions between themselves. As society became more complex, it also became more unequal, with the rich and powerful gaining privilege at the expense of the poor and powerless. Yet, Rousseau does not romanticize the idea of returning to the state of nature. He recognizes that the transition from a simpler, natural existence to the complexities of modern society cannot be undone. Instead, Rousseau urges us to rethink the structure of society, to question the values that underpin modern life. He calls for a social contract, a new form of society where individuals come together freely to form a collective will, one that prioritizes the common good and the equality of all people. As you drift further into sleep, think about this. What are the consequences of civilization? Are we, as Rousseau suggests, becoming more alienated from our true, natural selves as we build more complex systems of power and inequality? How often do we find ourselves caught up in the pursuit of material wealth, status, or power, losing sight of the simple connections that could bring us peace? Rousseau's vision challenges us to reconsider the cost of progress. He asks us to look beyond the surface of modern life and ask, are we truly free? Are we truly happy? Or are we trapped in a system that distorts our natural impulses, leading us away from compassion, equality, and harmony with nature? The concept of the noble savage serves as a reminder of the simplicity and purity that humans may have once experienced before the pressures of society took hold. It calls us to re-examine our priorities, our need for possessions, our pursuit of power, and the values that often drive us to create division and inequality in the world. So, as you lie here, let the idea of the noble savage settle gently in your thoughts. Imagine a life where human beings live not in competition, but in harmony, where society values equality, compassion, and cooperation above all else. Rousseau's vision asks us to consider whether it is possible to reclaim this simpler, purer way of living, and if so, what steps we might take to bring it into our modern world. As you rest here, letting the quiet of the night wash over you, imagine a world where everyone works together for the common good, where the bonds of society are rooted not in force or coercion, but in mutual consent and collective responsibility. What does it mean to be a part of society? What obligations do we owe to one another? And how do we create a society that is just and fair for all? These are the central questions explored in Jean-Jacques Rousseau's The Social Contract, one of the most influential works in political philosophy. Rousseau's vision of the social contract is not just about the creation of laws or political institutions. It is about the way in which individuals come together to form a community, a collective body that transcends individual interests and is based on the principles of freedom, equality, and mutual respect. Rousseau begins with a fundamental idea that in the state of nature, humans were free, but they were also isolated, vulnerable, and subject to the whims of nature. The creation of society, according to Rousseau, brought both advantages and disadvantages. On one hand, it allowed individuals to come together, to cooperate, and to create the institutions necessary for survival. On the other hand, it introduced inequality, competition, and the domination of the weak by the powerful. The social contract is Rousseau's solution to this problem. It is the agreement by which individuals come together to form a collective body, the general will, which represents the collective interests of society. In the social contract, individuals agree to give up some of their natural freedom in exchange for the protection and benefits of living in a community. However, Rousseau is clear that this is not a surrender to the will of any one individual or group. It is an agreement to act in accordance with the general will, the common good, that transcends personal desires and interests. As you lie here, think about this. What does it mean to live in a society? How do we balance individual freedom with the needs of the community? Rousseau's vision of the social contract asks us to consider not just what we owe to ourselves, but what we owe to each other. It challenges us to think about society not as a collection of isolated individuals, but as a collective body, where each person's well-being is connected to the well-being of all. For Rousseau, the social contract is not just a political theory. It is a moral and ethical framework. It calls for individuals to act in harmony with the general will, to subordinate their own personal interests to the common good. In this way, the social contract is not about mere obedience to laws or authority. It is about creating a society where individuals work together to achieve a shared vision of justice and equality. Rousseau's theory also introduces the idea of freedom in the context of the social contract. While individuals give up some of their natural freedom when they join society, they gain something far more important: the freedom to live as part of a collective, a community where they are protected, where their rights are respected, and where they can pursue their happiness in harmony with others. For Rousseau, true freedom is not the ability to act without restriction, but the ability to live according to the general will, to contribute to the common good, and to participate in the creation of a just society. In the quiet of the night, reflect on the idea of the social contract. How do you experience your role in society? What obligations do you have to others, and what do you expect in return? Rousseau's philosophy challenges us to think about the balance between individual liberty and collective responsibility. It asks us to imagine a society where each person's freedom is connected to the freedom of others, where justice and equality are not just ideals, but living principles that shape our daily lives. So as you rest here, let the idea of the social contract settle within you. Imagine a society where the general will is not determined by force, but by mutual consent. A society where individuals work together to create a community of justice, equality, and respect. Rousseau's vision of the social contract calls us to reimagine society, not as a system of power and domination, but as a cooperative, collective effort to build a world where all can flourish. As the stillness of the night wraps around you, imagine the human mind as a blank slate, untouched by the experiences of the world. A fresh canvas, waiting to be filled with ideas, sensations, and perceptions. In this quiet space, where every thought and belief is yet to be formed, who are you? This is the essence of the tabula rasa, the idea that the human mind is a blank slate at birth, and that all knowledge comes from experience. First articulated by John Locke in his essay concerning human understanding, the concept of tabula rasa challenges the idea that we are born with innate knowledge or pre-existing ideas. According to Locke, when we are born, our minds are like empty containers, waiting to be shaped and filled by our experiences in the world. Everything we know, every idea, belief, and concept is derived from our interaction with the world around us. For Locke, knowledge is not something that we are born with, but something that we acquire through our senses and our experiences. Our minds receive impressions from the world, and through reflection and reason, these impressions are transformed into ideas. This process of learning is gradual, built on the foundation of sensory experience, and it shapes our understanding of the world and ourselves. As you rest here, drifting gently toward sleep, think about this. What would it mean to be born with a mind that is not preformed, that is open and receptive to the world? How does your own mind develop as you experience the world around you? Every thought, every idea you have is based on what you've learned and experienced. According to Locke, your identity, your beliefs, and even your understanding of right and wrong are not inborn, but are shaped by the world you encounter and the people you meet. Locke's view of the mind as a blank slate also brings with it the idea of empiricism, the belief that all knowledge comes from sensory experience. For Locke, nothing exists in the mind that was not first experienced through the senses. This stands in contrast to rationalism, which holds that certain knowledge or ideas are innate or accessible to reason alone. Locke's empiricism emphasizes the importance of observation, experience, and sensory perception as the foundation of all knowledge. As you lie here, think about how much of your understanding of the world comes from what you see, hear, feel, and experience. How does the world shape your thoughts, your beliefs, and your perceptions? Locke's philosophy invites us to consider how deeply our experiences influence who we become and how we come to understand the world. Your mind is not something fixed or predetermined. It is a dynamic, ever-evolving process, constantly shaped by new experiences and insights. In this sense, the tabula rasa challenges us to embrace the possibility of change and growth. It suggests that we are not bound by predetermined ideas or notions. Instead, we are always in the process of becoming, of learning, and of expanding our understanding. The experiences we encounter shape our minds, and as we continue to learn, our minds evolve, allowing us to gain deeper insights into ourselves and the world. At the same time, Locke's view of the mind also brings a sense of responsibility. If we are born without innate ideas, then it is up to us to shape our understanding of the world through careful observation, reflection, and learning. Our minds are not predetermined. They are open, receptive, and capable of growth. But it is our responsibility to fill that blank slate with knowledge that is true, just, and meaningful. So, as you rest here, let this idea settle in your mind. Your thoughts and beliefs are not fixed. They are the result of your experiences, your senses, and your reflections. Your mind is always open, always evolving, always capable of growth. And in this quiet moment, you are reminded that your potential for learning, understanding, and transformation is boundless. Just like the blank slate upon which all of your experiences are written. As the peaceful stillness of the night surrounds you, imagine a force within you, a force that drives you, pushes you forward, urges you to grow, to create, to overcome obstacles. What if this force were the very essence of who you are? What if this force were the ultimate motivation behind every action, every decision, every desire you have? This is the concept of the will to power, a central idea in the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. For Nietzsche, the will to power is not merely about physical strength or domination over others. It is the fundamental drive within every human being to assert and enhance their own existence, to grow, to transform, and to overcome challenges. The will to power is the creative force that shapes human life, driving us to transcend our current limitations and become more than we are. Nietzsche believed that the will to power is a deeper, more fundamental force than other drives, such as the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain. It is not just a desire to possess power in the conventional sense, but a desire to expand, to evolve, and to reach the fullest expression of oneself. It is about becoming who you are, not through external expectations, but through the self-overcoming of limitations, doubts, and fears. As you rest here, gently letting sleep embrace you, think about this. What motivates you in life? What drives you to reach for more, to challenge yourself, to push against the boundaries that hold you back? Nietzsche's will to power calls us to embrace our inner drive for growth, to recognize that the pursuit of power is not about domination or control, but about the power to shape our own lives, to create meaning, and to achieve self-mastery. For Nietzsche, the will to power is not just about external achievement or success. It is about internal strength, the ability to master oneself, to shape one's destiny, and to live authentically. In a world that often demands conformity, the will to power encourages us to embrace our individuality, to become who we truly are, and to rise above societal pressures. It is the force that drives us to break free from the constraints of social norms, to challenge the status quo, and to live according to our own values. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power also challenges traditional ideas about morality. Many moral systems, Nietzsche argued, are built on the values of weakness, self-sacrifice, and submission. But these values, Nietzsche believed, stifle the individual's creative potential. The will to power, in contrast, is about embracing strength, self-assertion, and the desire to create something new and meaningful. It is the force that drives us to transcend our limitations and to live with vitality and passion. In the stillness of the night, consider this. How often do you live according to external expectations, the values of society, or the demands of others? Nietzsche's will to power calls us to look inward, to find the strength within ourselves, to live authentically, to assert our own values, and to create a life that is truly ours. It asks us to embrace the struggles and challenges we face, for they are the very tools that allow us to grow, to overcome, and to reach our fullest potential. As you drift further into sleep, let the thought of the will to power guide you. Recognize the strength that lies within you, the power to shape your own life, to rise above obstacles, and to become more than you are. The will to power is not a call for domination over others. It is a call to master yourself, to embrace your own potential, and to live a life of self-overcoming. In this journey of growth, you are constantly becoming, constantly evolving, and constantly reaching for the fullest expression of who you are. As the stillness of the night surrounds you, imagine a world where fairness is the central guiding principle, where every person is treated with respect and dignity, and where justice is not just an abstract ideal, but a reality that shapes the very foundation of society. This is the world envisioned by John Rawls in his groundbreaking work, A Theory of Justice. Rawls argues that justice should not be about the distribution of resources according to wealth or power, but about ensuring that every person has access to the opportunities, protections, and rights they deserve. In his original position, Rawls asks us to imagine a society where we do not know our own social status, wealth, abilities, or personal characteristics. This hypothetical veil of ignorance forces us to consider justice from a perspective of equality, where we design society's rules as if we could end up in any position within it. Rawls's central concept is the difference principle, which suggests that inequalities in society are only justifiable if they benefit the least advantaged members of society. In other words, society should be structured in such a way that those who are most disadvantaged have the greatest opportunities to improve their lives. Rawls contends that a just society is one where the gap between the rich and poor is minimized, and where the most vulnerable are given the support they need to thrive. As you rest here, think about this. What does justice mean to you? Is it simply about equal treatment for all? Or is it about ensuring that the most disadvantaged among us have the opportunities and support they need to live fulfilling lives? Rawls' vision of justice challenges us to think beyond simple fairness and equality. It asks us to consider the deeper, moral obligations we have to those who are most in need. The concept of the veil of ignorance is one of Rawls' most innovative contributions. By stripping away all knowledge of our personal characteristics, the veil forces us to think about justice in the most impartial way possible. If we did not know whether we would be born rich or poor, healthy or sick, powerful or powerless, we would design a society that ensures basic rights, opportunities, and protections for all. In this way, Rawls's theory encourages us to consider justice from a perspective that is deeply rooted in empathy and moral responsibility. As you drift into sleep, think about the implications of Rawls's theory. What kind of society would we create if we truly did not know where we would stand within it? What would it mean to prioritize the needs of the most vulnerable? To design a society that actively works to reduce inequality and create fairness? Rawls teaches us that justice is not just about laws or institutions. It is about the moral commitments we make to one another as members of a shared community. The idea of the difference principle also challenges us to think about the deeper causes of inequality and poverty. Rawls suggests that a just society would not simply alleviate the symptoms of inequality, but would address its root causes by providing opportunities, education, and support to those who are most disadvantaged. Justice, in this sense, is not about punishment or retribution, but about building a society where all people have the chance to succeed and live with dignity. In the quiet of the night, let the thought of justice linger with you. How can we create a more just world where fairness is not just a lofty ideal, but a tangible reality for all? Rawls's theory invites us to ask what kind of society we want to live in, and what steps we can take to ensure that justice is not only done, but seen to be done. The ideal of justice calls us to be both fair and compassionate, to create systems that elevate the most vulnerable, and to always strive for a society that values equality, opportunity, and human dignity. As the quiet of the night surrounds you and your mind begins to drift, imagine a simple question that has echoed through the ages. What does it mean to be? What does it mean to truly exist, to be a conscious being in a world that is ever-changing? This is the central question of Martin Heidegger's philosophy. In his seminal work, Being and Time, Heidegger explores the nature of existence, or what he calls being. For Heidegger, the fundamental question of philosophy is not about individual objects or entities, but about being itself, the very essence of what it means to be alive, to be aware, to exist in the world. Heidegger argues that we are often so caught up in the day-to-day affairs of life that we forget to ask this most fundamental question. What does it mean to be? Heidegger's analysis begins with the concept of Dasein, which means being there, or presence. Dasein refers to human existence, the way in which we find ourselves being in the world. Unlike objects, which simply exist in a passive, objective way, Humans are conscious of their own existence, and this awareness is what makes us unique. For Heidegger, the way we understand our own being is shaped by our relationship to time, to others, and to the world around us. As you rest here, let your thoughts settle on this idea. What does it mean for you to exist? How do you experience your own being? Heidegger suggests that we often take our existence for granted, going through life without truly considering what it means to be. But by questioning our own existence, by becoming aware of our being, we can live more authentically and meaningfully. To live authentically, Heidegger argues, is to recognize the finitude of our existence and to confront the reality of our own mortality. Heidegger's philosophy emphasizes the importance of being toward death, a concept that refers to the way we confront and understand our own mortality. In the face of death, Heidegger believes, we are called to live more fully and authentically. The awareness of our finite nature forces us to live with intention, to make choices that align with our true values and desires, rather than living in a way that is dictated by societal expectations or superficial concerns. Death is not something to fear, Heidegger suggests, but a reminder that our time is limited and that we must make the most of it. As you reflect on this, think about your own relationship with time and death. How does your awareness of your mortality shape the way you live? Do you take your existence for granted, or do you actively engage with it, living with intention and authenticity? Heidegger's concept of being toward death challenges us to confront the reality of our finitude and to live more meaningfully, knowing that our time is limited. Heidegger also explores the concept of being with others, the way in which our existence is shaped by our relationships with other people. We are not isolated beings, Heidegger argues, but beings who are deeply connected to the world and to those around us. Our identity is shaped by our interactions with others, and our understanding of ourselves is always mediated by the presence of others. In this way, our being is always social, always relational. As you drift further into sleep, consider the role that others play in your experience of being. How do your relationships with family, friends, and society shape your sense of self? Heidegger's philosophy invites us to recognize that we are not solitary individuals, but beings who are intertwined with the world and with others. To understand our being fully, we must also understand our connection to others and the way in which we co-create the world together. So, as you lie here, quietly reflecting, let the question of being linger in your mind. What does it mean for you to be? How do you experience your existence, and how do you make sense of the world and your place in it? Heidegger's philosophy asks us to live consciously, to engage deeply with the world, and to recognize that the question of being is not just a philosophical inquiry. It is the very essence of our lives.